Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Washington County's Personnel Committee meeting. It's been quite a day. I'm going to ask if Justice Alicia Devins, seeing that November and December are her last months with us before she moves on to better things, if you would lead us in the prayer and the pledge. Justice Devins, please.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for tonight, Lord. Thank you for the elected officials that you provided us with this season. Pray, Lord, for our meeting tonight to go well. Give us all wisdom and be with each of the speakers tonight, Lord. Help us to stay focused on being servants to the citizens of Washington County first, and help us to also just be wise about the things that we speak of and how and take seriously the concerns of these citizens. Pray, Lord, that you would be with each person again this evening. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Devins. I have a motion to adopt the agenda. Do I have a second? And I have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, first on our agenda, let me get this going, is a request from Judge Zimmerman's office. And these are two positions that have been submitted for a title change. And the two positions are Juvenile Intake Division Coordinator and Lead Juvenile Officer, Specialized Police Officer. And this is budget neutral, but because of our policies, if we're going to have a title change, we will have to approve it and then move it on to the full quorum court for approval. So is there any discussion on Judge Zimmerman's request to change the title of Division Coordinator to Juvenile Intake Division, or Diversion Coordinator, and Juvenile Officer to Juvenile Probation Officer, and Juvenile Officer Specialized Police Officer to Lead Juvenile Officer for the Circuit Court 3? Is there any discussion on this? I have Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good evening.
Good evening.
I had a walk. I couldn't find a parking place. So, any additional costs in making these changes?
No, there's not. This is budget neutral. She did have a supervisor, rather senior supervisor, who retired, and which leaves that money in her budget for this position. So it's budget neutral, and that's why we'll just pass this on to the quorum court and not pass it through to budget and finance.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. This will pass on to the full quorum court for approval. Moving on to the next one. This is a request that came from the sheriff's office. And a lot of these, if you look in either your packet for the committee members, or it's also on the computer. I apologize. We're on baby alert labor, and so our son's calling from Texas saying I don't know if they're on their way to the hospital or not, so if you hear that buzz, I'm sorry. But for those committee members, if you will look on, I think you've got a hard copy, and it's the blue one. And what does, the judge's office is, sheriff's office is requesting is the name change or title change on a lot of these positions. So if you will find your blue shaded information.
It's in their agenda packet, it's page 20.
Okay, agenda package, page 2.
20.
20. Okay. Hold on. We'll wait till everybody gets there. There we go. It's 5.2 on our agenda. And it's due to the organization and the unforeseen needs from the Sheriff's Department. But they're asking that these titles be changed. Some of them will stay the same. Some have been regraded. And some have had a grade increase within that margin. So we're going to go through them, starting with the lieutenant's position. Does everybody see where we are? In the middle column, where it says DBC compensation title, and it says same, you're going to be working to the left. So it's going to stay at lieutenant, and there is no change on the grade. Going down to the next one, we have the dispatch manager. The title will be changed to 911 communications director. And that has had a grade change of 2 points. It's gone from a 21 to a 23 grade. And those that are in yellow, if you see that on your screen, those are the different, I guess, categories that the grade has changed. And basically, this position was increased 2 points due to the management responsibility that that person will have. Going down to the fire marshal, that will remain the same. Sergeant, the same. And then the corporal will stay the same, as will corporal animal control. And on some of these, if you look at the corporal, there are points that have been either devalued or other points that were increased in value as far as responsibility is concerned and what the responsibilities are to that position. However, the overall grade didn't change. And so if it stays the same as far as the grade is concerned, then it remains that monetary value. We're on the same page on that, okay? Going down to the assistant fire marshal, there's no change in the job rating on that. And then we have the executive assistant sheriff's administrator. That is changing to fiscal and administrative manager. And that has increased 3 points. And what has changed is the responsibility from support management to active management. And so the area of responsibility in active management has changed to warrant the 3-point grade. All right, going down to civil process bookkeeper. That went up 1 grade just due to non-support to supervisory and management responsibilities. Going down to lead dispatcher, that has been retitled to 911 communications specialist supervisor, and it has a 1-point grade increase, and that's due to changes in leadership and expanding the department. Moving to the next one, the deputy first class has not changed. Evidence coordinator is changed to evidence manager. This, although the grade stayed the same, they're changing the title to this due to the computer education that this position has to have. Okay, next we get to warrants and records supervisor. There's no change. The animal control officer, civilian, is changed to civilian animal control officer with no rating change. The adult detention officer remains the same, although the grade went up 1. It has to do with the computer systems and the monitoring systems that they have to do. They have to be aware of everybody, all the movement that's going on in the building and in the jails. And so that went up 1 grade. The other is the dispatcher is changed to communications specialist. That went up 2 grades because they are now responsible for the equipment, and I guess it's just the upgrade in specialized software systems, knowledge of specialized software systems that they have to have. So therefore, it warrants a 2-point grade. Okay. Moving on to the administrative detention bookkeeper. Administrative detention bookkeeper. It remains the same. The enforcement secretary remains the same with no change in the job rating. Accounts payable purchasing assistant, that remains the same with no job rating increase. And then we have the assistant civil process bookkeeper. That went up 1 point in the grade, and that's due to computer software responsibilities. Then we have the property assistant, has been changed to property management. That's gone up 1 point on their grade, and it has to do with the property management and equipment that they are responsible for. And then the last 2, records clerk secretary, has been changed to warrants record clerk with no rating, job rating change. And secretary receptionist for the sheriff is now secretary receptionist with no change in job rating. So all of these, in order for the changes to take effect in our 2019 budget, they all have to have a title change. Therefore, we have to approve this, and there is funding to it. If you look at the ordinance that they are asking for us to approve, the ordinance to change the titles of the personnel positions in the sheriff's and jail budget. And although there is appropriation for this, this will go on to budget and finance. So whoever makes the motion, it has to go through budget and finance for appropriations. And then once we discuss the appropriations there, we'll determine how we're going to move it on to the full quorum court. I have Justice Ussery if you want a comment on why we're making all of these title changes, and it is necessary for the budget cycle, is it not?
Well, yeah, this will have to be changed before we can move forward with any of the other changes. We've got to, we're trying to rate these guys just a little differently because we're looking at paying them on a little different scale, and so they have to be separated from everybody else.
Okay.
So this is part of the sheriff's request to change some of the funding there, some of the salaries.
And I also wanted to make mention that we have had this discussion in budget and finance and also in personnel, making sure that the grading is up to par. And the sheriff's office has not had a grade evaluation in 6 years. We usually like to have it, from what Blair Johansson was sharing and the chief was sharing today. Every 2 to 3 years, they want to look at, each department looks at where the salary range is for their department, and they want to keep it current. Well, the sheriff hasn't had it in 6 years. So that's why there is so many of them asking for the title change and for the grade change. Is there any discussion? I have Justice Pond.
Yes, ma'am. I want to just ask one question. Total appropriation here on this second page of this copy of an ordinance is $4,720.56. Total appropriation for all those changes, is that like for 1 month?
I think I'm going to have to ask either the sheriff or, I'm going to ask the sheriff or, what, it's just 6 weeks, yeah, it's 6 weeks. Or, we're going to have Mr. Watson from
Yeah.
personnel.
Sorry. Thank you,
Go ahead,
JP.
thank you.
Actually, the ordinance is to cover the 6 weeks between now and the end of the year, okay? They did upgrade those positions, but traditionally, this time of year, they do a sweep of unfilled positions or, you know, where they have extra salary dollars. And that's going to fund all these changes, these ones articulated here, okay?
Half will come from county general and the other half will come from the sheriff's budget.
But that means that the increase for next year would be 12 times this 4,720.56. Is that correct?
Plus whatever increases we have for county budget.
It's going to come to approximately $47,000 for next year to cover
All up.
this.
But we can have that discussion for, at budget meeting. I have Justice Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was also going to ask on how much it was per, what the per was, because it doesn't show there. But, so it's $5,261.81 with benefits for a month, or for, what did you say, 6
For the
weeks?
residual
remaining
amount
of
of
the year.
2018.
For the rest of the, okay.
Yes, to
But
the
it'd
end.
also be that much going forward next year, would it not?
Yes.
So we're approving raises tonight on this? That's what it is?
Well, if he has extra salary dollars that's allocated for 2018, and he's funding it out of that, he's doing it with the money that he has for this year.
Covering it for this year?
Yes.
Okay, my second question was, why have grade changes not been done all along the way instead of all of a sudden?
Well,
Part of it was our request, was it not, Sheriff, that we asked?
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm wanting to know why we don't take care of the people along the way instead of waiting until it's kind of forced upon us.
I don't know if it's forced upon, JP Dennis, what happens oftentimes, as you well know, when I do presentations for different departments as well as elected officials, some of them do it throughout the year. That's why you see when we're bringing either grade changes or new positions in. I think by dint of the sheer numbers of folks at the sheriff's office, they've done it on a periodic basis. But I guess this was an opportunity, along with the other things, for them to do it in one shot, particularly for those that were a little bit long in the tooth that hadn't been upgraded. But I would think now that they're probably close to one of the areas that have the majority of them up to speed. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question.
I'm glad they are.
Yes.
I'd like to see them up to speed.
Got it.
I'm just surprised we come to the end of the year when we're running close on money.
Yeah.
And then we're adding things here at the last minute to this year's budget.
Part of it is twofold, though. One of these title changes have to occur now in order for them to take effect for the 2019 budget. So
Okay.
part of that has to do with, we need to do the name changes or the title changes in personnel this year. And
So then if you make a name change, you have to change the salary this year as well, is what this is saying.
part of it was that it was regraded, though it hadn't been regraded in 6 years.
And they
And
have the
that-
funds available.
And they had funds available.
Okay. All right, good.
But
Good to know
part
we
of
got
that-
funds available.
If,
All right,
if,
thank
just
you.
to refresh all of our memory, we've had this discussion with the sheriff's department when we look at how lagging their salaries were on certain levels when we were looking at it, saying, you mean they only get paid this much and they only get paid this much? And I know that I approached the sheriff and had this conversation. We need to regrade these. You know, somebody's going to go out and lay down their life for us every day. I think it needs to be higher than a 10, which is just above minimum wage. So, you know, in asking those questions and engaging in that dialogue with the sheriff, and it had been 6 years since we regrade that. And the other thing is, and I engaged this conversation with the chief of staff also, we need to look at the road department, the heavy equipment operators. We need to look at those. And so what we're going to do is evaluate where we are in the grading, the JSAT policy, and make sure that we aren't lagging behind. So this is going to be an overall assessment of what we're going to be doing, and probably you'll see that next year, moving forward. Because I think we need to, and I agree with you completely. We do not need to lag behind. I have Justice Harbison.
Oh, this question's for you, Watson, and I'm not sure you were here then. What year did we bring everybody up to market value?
2016.
2016, and this is 2018, so 2 years, and we gave a raise last year, so as tight as money is, you know, I think we need to keep in mind, we had people that had huge raises in 16, getting them up to market value. And I don't think we should be that far behind the market when we're talking about, and, you know, there's good reason for the sheriff to come in and say, you know, we want to go on this new system. But until we do something about money, we don't have the money. I mean, until we do something about the millage, and until we do something about all of these things. And, you know, and I'm going to hold some of this for the budget meeting, but I have a problem with the money for salaries being used by the departments when that is supposed to be swept back into unappropriated funds. This is the way we used to do it, and I think we need to go back because it gives us a more realistic of how much money is available for the county. We're spending money, they're saying this is covered. Well, it is covered in a way, but in a way it's not covered because it's money they didn't use for salaries this year, and that's supposed to revert back into unappropriated funds, and it's not. And that's something we need to talk about for this next year to reinstate that, because I really think it needs to be reinstated. I have no problem, you know, this doesn't look like very much money, but in the long run, it is. And it needs to be regraded. But, you know, in 2016, we brought everybody up to market value. That's only 2 years ago. So, you know, until we can find a bucket with a lot more money in it than we've got now, we're going to have to put our brakes on. So those are just my comments. I'll address this more in budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Harbison. I have Justice Harvey Beaumont.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This doesn't have anything to do with the STEP program that the sheriff's asked about, does it?
No, this is JSAT policy.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, we've had some proposals of reducing budget cost from a number of the departments. I think our chairman asked for about 3% reduction, and apparently we've had some positive response on that, haven't we? And, you know, I know the sheriff's department and the county sheriff, the county judge has reduced his budget substantially. And, you know, guys, I tell you, I don't want to see our road department people short of help all the time because they're losing people to construction. And I don't want to see our sheriff's people out here losing employees to the cities or whatever. I just think we need to be real careful and realize that we all need to continue to focus on how we can improve efficiency of this whole thing. And I think we've had some really positive things going on there. And I believe the current administration is still focused on that. And we can continue to do some more improvements. So, you know, I don't think we'd have much opportunity to do anything but to go ahead and increase some wages. And we know that the road department and the sheriff's department are two that are where most of our salary costs come from, but they're services that we've got to have. And so I'm all in favor of going ahead and pass this on, even though it is going to cut into us. But I think they know what's going on down there and these evaluations. Personally, I'm going to support it. But I'm going to be looking at every area I can come up with to make suggestions to cut budgets. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Justice Bowman. Yes. Justice Colleen, yeah. Thank you. I was going to say Colleen.
Thank you, Chairman. I just need some clarification. We're doing these reclassifications or regrades.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that annually we do a evaluation of that employee's performance? Is that something we do in this?
Yes.
So I'm a little bit befuddled by the fact that we are evaluating these employees over 6 years and they're doing duties that we're not being evaluated on. Is that what I'm seeing or hearing them say when they say they have not upgraded in 6 years, yet these duties have migrated to this point?
I don't know if they've migrated to this point, but they've been reassessed. I mean, there hasn't been a regrading. Is that correct, Sheriff? Regrading of these positions in 6 years?
But I guess I'm hearing you say that every year we're looking at these employees and we are evaluating their performance based on the duties that they are assigned to do. Correct. And yet this regrading lets me think that they are doing duties for which they're not being graded on. Am I misunderstanding how this?
Their jobs change, you know, they evolve, and that's why the court has instituted what Watson was just talking about.
Okay. If you would, please, he needs.
Sorry. The evaluation process is done on every employee based on their job performance. You're correct in that. But the job evaluation, as far as the overall job position evaluation, was something that you all instituted that, whether it's hard and fast or not, it's recommended every year to 3 years, you know, at a 5-year max, and we're moving into the 6th year on just these positions.
Right.
And so they're not, we talked about raises and stuff, they're not necessarily raises, it's by policy that if their grade changes on a job evaluation, grading change, that it's an automatic slide into that next deal, okay? So it's not like you're saying, okay, well, we'll give you a raise. It's their job changed. And so I probably didn't even answer your question.
Well, I'm just
Areas of responsibility, that's part of the job evaluation assessment program that the county, part of our processes is we have the Johansson Group give us an area of responsibility. These are the skill sets that is required in this particular position that you are interviewing for. And then if you can see the numbers on all these, and each skill set is given a value, and you add up all of those skill sets and requirement, education, certification, training, and whatnot, and then it's given a overall grade. So these positions, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, their area of responsibility has increased on some of them. And that's why you had the title change, but also the grade change.
Yeah. Jobs have evolved, if you will, in a lot of these areas. And just for you, a little bit of history in that we developed our own HR within this last year. So prior to that time, county HR was directing, you know, would say, okay, it's time to evaluate here and there. And I think for us, we've been in the learning process trying to figure out where we're at in timing-wise, and these particular jobs were identified that they hadn't been re-rated in quite some time. So our HR division pulled them out. We got with Johansson, basically just went over their jobs, and this is how they fell out. Of all of those, I think, weren't there just 3 or 4 positions that actually required an infusion? So a lot of them are title change, or they went up 1 grade, and that
The
doesn't require
points might have
anything.
gone up, but the overall grade didn't on some.
Yeah.
Some went up just 1 point on the overall grade. But during the year, you have brought several positions that were re-rated or regraded, and there was salary increase because of either certification or duty changes, title change, education. Therefore, we needed a regrading. So you've done that throughout the year on certain positions. These are just these particular ones that haven't been regraded.
Right, these are this kind of cleanup where our HR finally got to the point where these are the ones that we identified that had been missed.
It's not the entire sheriff's department.
No.
Right.
Okay.
No, we're current everywhere,
Right.
and I think that this, if HR had stayed with the county, we probably would have been on top of this because they were used to directing some of this. This is new to us, you know, as far as handling our own HR, and so they got identified mid-year, the evaluations are done, and they're just now hitting the plate. This isn't an end around, not trying to pull the rug, this is just what it is. The re-ratings were done, this is what's on paper. And you're correct, it is a salary sweep, you know, that's money, but it does cover, it's not, in the big scheme of things, it's not a ton of money. It's just how they're rated now, so that's my ask, is that we just recognize that.
Okay,
Move
I just
on.
wanted clarification on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Is there any other discussion?
Yes.
I have Justice Pond.
Yeah, it might have been the last committee meeting, you had a suggestion as far as this, moving into this step system, of cutting some other departments or places. It's just, I was just wondering, do you foresee any place in your department where you might be able to do some cuts?
You talking about personnel?
I don't know.
Or what do you,
I'm just kind of looking at.
oh, to
We gotta
infuse,
figure out
to do our part to infuse the STEP program?
Yeah, we got,
Yes.
we got to figure out a way to pay for this stuff. I'm not saying you don't need it, I totally agree that you do, but we got to figure out how to pay for it.
Yes, I worked with Mr. Ussery on this, and I think he's got a, right? You got what I submitted? Okay, yes,
So
so,
I'm ready to move this on to for the Budget Committee of the whole, but, you know, by the time it gets to there and we hear about it, I wanna have some kind of understanding where we're gonna be doing some cuts so we can pay for this. Thank you,
And
and so moved.
just to be clear, this is not a STEP program. We're not implementing the STEP program that we've discussed in other committee meetings. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Any public comment? I have a motion and a second to pass this on to the Committee of the Whole, the Budget Finance Committee, for approval. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now, then, is there any other business to discuss or be brought up before this committee on personnel? Is there any public comment? Without any public comment, do I have a final motion? Move for adjournment in a second. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
I'd like to call the Finance and Budget Committee to order. And the first thing that we have is the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor? Okay. The next thing, we have the treasurer's report from Bobby Hill.
Hello, everybody. If I start slurring my words, it's because I got a mouth guardian, not because the volume I was on earlier, but we're good. 3.1. The first line there, the general expenditures came in over revenues, 2.3 to 1.9, and we ended October with just 8.8 million in the general fund. As y'all know, I like to have at least 10, or I start to get worried, but it is what it is. It's 8.8 to end the month, but we did get our October settlement in earlier this week, and as of today, the general fund has $12.2 million in it. And I figure by the end of the year, it's going to settle in around 11 million, which is more than $1 million less than this same time last year. Down to 2000 Road, they continue to do well. 3017 Jail, they had revenues of 1.5 million and expenses of only 1.2. So they ended the month with 833,000. I do not expect any more general infusions into the jail for 2018. Bottom of the next page, we began the month with 34.5 million in the bank. We ended the month with 36.2. 3.2, the 1 cent sales tax. Another good month for that, a little over a 6% increase over last year. For the year, about 308,000 over 2017, and we should easily make our projection at the end of the year. 3.3, quarter cent jail tax, also doing well, 418,000 more than this same time last year. Got 906,000 in this month, and again, we should easily make our projection. 3.4, the half-cent road tax, up close to 7%. For the year, we've got 1.363 in, and we should easily make that projection. 3.5, the employee insurance. We began and ended about 2.8, so at least for this month, all is well with employee insurance. And I added 2 extra reports just for your information. First report is January through October of this year, and the second report is January 2017 through October. The main thing is just the top line general. As I said earlier, we have 8.8 million currently. This same time frame last year, we had 10.1. So about 1.3 million less in the coffers, cash money, than we had last year. And that's just for your information. 3.6 and 3.7.
Did you find it? J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hill, you said we have that much less this year than we did last year, correct?
Yes, that's
What do
just
you
in
attribute-
balance cash money.
Okay, in balance cash money, not monopoly money.
No, not budget money. This is actual money.
What do you attribute that deficit to?
Hey, Tom.
Can you?
I just look at those middle 2 lines, and that tells the whole
Okay.
story. 21 in revenue and 24 in expenditures. So that's,
Very simple, thank you.
I mean, I'm not trying to be
I know, but it's
this is a
simple, you know.
complex situation, but it's also,
But what my point is, I guess, let me rephrase my question. What expenditures did you see that stood out this year over last year that would cause this deficit?
well, I don't track expenditures like the Comptroller does, but main thing is personnel costs.
Personnel.
We gave those raises last year, I mean, and the year before that.
Okay.
I'm not against raises, so. I do think
But that's
employees
something
need
that
to
we
get
need to be
raises, but-
cognizant of, is this is the impact that raises have on the budget. I mean, not the budget, but the treasurer, what's in the
Yeah,
bank.
At some point, we're gonna have to, well, I'm not telling y'all what to do, but revenue has got to start catching up with expenditures or vice versa.
And we've cut everything to the bone. Okay, I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Didn't you say there's going to be 11 million in carryover?
That's what I'm expecting by going into 2019, 11 million.
Okay.
At this same time last year, we had 12.2 going
12.2,
into,
okay. So
coming into this year.
It's still be the $1.2 million difference we're talking about. Okay,
Something like
thank you. Thank you.
J.P. Harvison.
Okay, we had infusion into the jail of what, 488,000?
410,000 this year.
410,000. All right, there's another 688,000 that was spent. What was that spent on?
688,000 for, are you talking about what's left?
Well, it was on the old, expenditures on the old schedule. It was something like, and I'm not going to say that was, but it was somewhere around $688,000 in addition to that 4,200 that we had for the infusion in the jail. And
Well, this year we have-
it came out of unappropriated funds.
Well, this year we set aside like $1 million, I think, close to $1 million for the jail if we needed it.
Right.
And we only did 400,000.
But we took some other money out of unappropriated funds, and I haven't been able, and I haven't sat down and really looked at it. And I was going to come down and ask you, and I haven't had time.
But
Where did-
if you're not talking
where
about the
did that-
difference, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, it was money taken out of unappropriated funds because this was the year that we were supposed to be flat and we're $1 million down. So if we had 400,000 of the jail and 600,000 something somewhere else, that's your $1 million that's been spent. And I'm trying to figure out where that $688,000 was spent.
I would have to look. All I know is about the 410.
Right. But it was on unappropriated funds, so anyway,
Okay.
I'll be down to see.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick clarification. So I'm looking back up here at the additional revenues we brought in on the sales tax for the year. Looks like about 5% for jail and the 1% sales tax and about 8% for the county road tax. So we're down, I guess is the right verbiage, about $1.8 million, you said, or $1.2 million?
$1.2 million.
$1.2 million. Is that even with those additional bumps in revenue? So really,
That's with all the
perhaps
growth.
the overspending was worse than $1.2 million. It was a little deeper than that.
No, we just had enough growth to offset.
We just had enough growth to kind of, do you anticipate, and I know you've probably got this in your stuff for next year, but do you anticipate that stream of revenue continuing at that level?
I do, unless something, sales tax have been real good for at least the last 4 years. I don't see anything really that is going to stop it, or something that could happen overnight, but, so, and, unless we have another crisis in the financial sector, I think property taxes are going to keep going up as well.
But it is a little more than the 1.2 overspend. It's actually 1.2 plus any additional revenues we had over last year as well, so.
That is a way of looking at it, yes.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Are there any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, then we'll go on to the Comptroller's report.
Okay, on page 14 is the summary statement of operations, expenses by fund and department. And nearly all the budgets are in line. We should be at about 83%. And if you look on page 15 for the general fund, they were at about 83% overall for all of general fund. And then if you go down to page page 20, the overall for the special projects and general was 81% overall. So so we're about where we should be for our spending versus our budget. And then for page 21 is the unappropriated reserve balance report. And for October, there weren't any changes in the unappropriated reserve balance.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the comptroller? Okay, yes, sir, go again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have a good guess on what the total amount of turnback will be this year?
I think Bobby Hill calculates that number.
Overall? And if you need time to kind of look through that, I don't care to wait for that answer in a little bit. That's nothing like springing big math on you after you sit down.
Let me look.
I was thinking 11
Overall,
million.
for all the funds that budget for, this is not the latest update, around 24 million carry it over.
Okay, how much of that is turnback, do you know?
It's all, I mean, are we talking about the same thing?
Unspent budgeted revenue from, or unspent budgeted monies for this year. Not the holdback and, or the carryover.
We usually we have unspent about 10%.
Are we on track for that again this year?
It may be more like 8%.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Comptroller Shannon. Okay, the next thing on our list is Judge Beaumont has a line item transfer. I believe Ms. Frisbee's going to... No, wrong judge, sorry. And so, all we're doing is we're just moving some money around in this particular account in order to make the books balance. And so do we have a motion just to move this on to the full quorum court? Okay, yes, ma'am?
I guess this is why we imposed the line item restrictions we did, because budgeting should be true to budget. I mean, we always budget generously for jurors because the courts don't know how many jury trials they're going to end up having. And we like having that money left over. So I don't know that I feel good about all of it going to meals and mileage and cell phones. I'm just troubled that now we're seeing the reality of what our budgeting actually does, because this is the first year, thanks to J.P. Maxwell's change in budget controls, that we're actually seeing these. But, I mean, they technically still have a budget, but I think this is money that should be coming back, like J.P. Harbison was talking about, that should roll back to us. I mean, we're taking money from jurors to pay for cable TV. I don't know. I don't have a lot of comfort in this, so this has been, I guess it's more eye-opening than anything else, but I think this money should be coming back to us, not going to things that I can't even tell that are justified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Thank you, Justice Madison, for kind of jolting my memory. Did we not disallow them to use cable TV for their courts? Didn't they come in last year asking that they wanted cabling so that way they could have these televisions and they're going to watch and they're going to do these ads, and we said no. That was the health department. Okay, thank you. Health department, not,
Right.
so television and cable? I don't know. Well, my point being, if we disallowed it for the health department, why should we allow it for this judge? Thank you.
Well, we'll see if we can get some answers on that. Yes, Ms. Masson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little worried that J.P. Dennis wanted to ask something, or maybe he was sticking up for.
No, he's next. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
I'll just-
Since we made this policy change a year ago, did all the elected officials, were they aware of that, the judges and everybody else? Or did we send a memo out, or, I mean, she seems to have thought that nothing had changed, that she could do this year what she'd done the previous year. Does anybody know the answer to that question?
I'm sorry that I do not know the answer to that.
Okay.
But we can certainly find out.
Well, you would think when we're doing budgets that people would pay a little bit of attention since it affects them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, J.P. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass Judge Beaumont's line item transfer approval 5.1 through 5.2 to the full quorum court.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Ms. Harbison?
I just think that we need Judge Beaumont to explain what these are, because TV and cable may be something that's completely different than what we're thinking it is and that kind of thing. So I think we need to invite her to come explain what this is. I mean, you know, I'm willing to send it on to the quorum court, but an explanation would be nice.
Yep. And I agree, and we'll certainly do that. J.P. Pond?
Do we know whether this was money that, you know, since it's her court, is this money that we're talking about moving to a different line item? Was it money do we know whether it was coming from the general, or could it have come from grant monies, or where did the money come from to start with?
If it's on here, it'd be coming from general.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we'll certainly make sure that Ms.
All opposed?
All opposed?
No.
No. A hand vote.
Okay.
All for a hand vote.
Okay, all in favor, raise their hand. Okay, all opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it did not pass. All right, so we'll see if we can get some answers on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So now we're going to go on to Judge Zimmerman. And now, Ms. Frisbee, I believe you're the one that's going to talk to us about this one.
Can I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Judge Zimmerman submitted the letter. We are basically in the red in some of the line items, and I don't recall that we received in our department an email stating that there was an annual percentage, but we did explain in that letter as far as why we have reached the 12%. Our drug kits, I think we have about $10,000, and we have always used drug screens. And this year, the Comptroller's office created drug kits as a new line item, and so we had to move almost $7,000 into that line item. So that was something that was not expected. We also had three or four computers that crashed this year. They had to be replaced. We didn't have enough money budgeted in that. That was not something that we knew last year. And we also had 3 specialized officers that require safety vests, and that came out to a little bit over $2,000. Those are the reasons why we reached our 12% for the year, and basically we're just asking for $2,000 to cover the line items that we are negative in. Under advertisement and publication, I didn't budget any for this year, and we had to announce bids in the paper this year for a new vendor, so we didn't have any money budgeted for that. I went ahead and requested just a little extra in case we have to reopen them again. I'm hoping we don't, but that's why it's $130. Currently, we're negative, I believe, about $60. Any questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. One is, I don't know if everybody got a letter or not, but I know in our budget controls last year, that's when the 12% cap was enacted, so it may or may not have gone out in a letter. I don't know if anybody knows if we publicized that some other, but that's probably why you didn't get something there. I guess my question would be, have you already spent these monies, or are you planning to spend them?
No, sir, these are items that were in the red, so they're
So
negative.
you already spent the monies?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. I mean, that's the one thing I would say, is I think the intent of this was to catch this before, rather than, because it sounded like these are already spent, so I don't know.
Well, and I apologize. Like I said, I didn't realize that $6,900 was going to hurt me. So I requested the line item transfer, and then I was told that we had met our 12%. I didn't know that was not something that we planned on. We were forced to move that money.
So the line item just changed from drug screens to drug kits?
Yes.
You didn't really change the intent of the expense?
No.
It just has a different level?
Yes.
Okay. But the other two, we've already spent the money?
Yes, we had to buy computers,
Okay.
and we had to buy the safety vests.
I think the intent of the cap or whatever was so that we would know about these transfers before they happen. I don't have any problem, especially with the first one. I think if we just change the name of it, then that doesn't look as much to me like a transfer of monies as it is just renaming that line. But it does concern me a little that we're doing this after the fact, not beforehand, so.
I understand that, sir. We budgeted about $3,000 for computers, and like I said, we had to replace them. That was not, I guess. So you're saying that in the future, if we have to buy any computers, we should come, okay.
And just for the record, my understanding is the IT is taking care of that in the future going
That's
forward.
correct. That's what I've been informed.
So that should relieve some of the
Yes.
burden on that.
Yes.
Ms. Masson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you spend any money on cable TV?
No, ma'am, we don't. We don't
Thank
have
you.
any TV.
JP Harvest?
Do you have money in your budget that you want to transfer to these items? Is
Yes.
this what I understand? You have
Yes.
the money, but you want to transfer that money to pay for these items that
Yes,
you've
like
already
in general
purchased?
supplies, we run out of paper. We're down to 8 boxes for the year, and so I'm asking for $300 to buy paper.
Okay, thank you. I move that we approve these.
The second.
Oh,
Then
just a
you'd have
minute.
to second. Second. JP Pond made the motion,
Oh, we did. Oh, I didn't.
but you can second. I'll second the motion.
Is there further questions? Are there any other questions for Ms. Frisbee? Any public comment? Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay? So we'll go on to the next one. And the next one is an ordinance that we're anticipating $10,000 in law enforcement grant fund. And then we approve, we're appropriating the $10,000, am I on the wrong one? Okay, I'm so sorry. Right, reducing, I got ahead of myself, I apologize. An ordinance reducing $200,500 from unappropriated reserves in the court cost and fines fund budget for 2018 and appropriating said $200,500 to the other professional services line item in the building and grounds budget for 2018. And this was the money that was necessary to move the courthouse upstairs. And so, and we've kind of fleshed this out, or the different people have fleshed this out, and from everything we can determine, this is certainly something that is appropriate to do this. Yeah, J.P. Masson.
What were the bond advisors from Little Rock? What did they say? I mean, this is money that's pledged to pay off a bond, and I was very concerned that if we
Oh, yes.
the
I apologize. I'm not sure whether, Mr. Hill, could you explain this to me, or I can't, I'm not sure. Maybe Carl could explain it.
Yeah, we're talking about bonds, but I haven't talked to bonds. I don't know anything about that.
Brian did check with the bonds people, and he was, at 3 o'clock, he promised me he would send you an email on that, stating what he had found out
who was supposed to get the email?
to Bill from Brian.
Not to us.
Well, I'll say that I spoke to a former JP who said that there were times when this fund dipped below what was required and had to be replenished from reserves. I don't know if JP Harbison or JP Pond or anybody remembers that, but there were times when this fund did not have enough money to pay for the bond payments, and we had to fund it. And that's why I think it needs to be left intact. And we don't have an answer from the bond people. I mean, I don't think we have
Well,
all
we
the
do have an
information.
answer. He's supposed to tell you. Did he send you that email?
I didn't see it.
Okay.
I don't know where it went, but
He
I can.
indicated, he told me that he had contacted the bonds people and stated that if it was in surplus, that it could be funded for this. We started this about 2 or 3 months ago, and it's getting to the end of the year, so it may be mute anyway.
Well, then I think we should table it till next month and see if it's
Well, it'd just be
needed.
mute because we'll be out of the year.
I think before we table, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to explain that there's a certain amount over our bond payment that we're required to keep.
Right.
We are head and shoulders way, way above that.
But what is it?
And I don't have the exact amount, but it's considerable. It was more than enough to cover a payment or even 2 payments if we had to.
There's Bobby will explain the setup on the account.
All I know is it's about 850,000 in there currently, and it grows. It's been growing year to year. So I've talked to auditors here. I've talked to AAC, and they never could tell me if it was right or wrong. But there is language that if there is a surplus, you can use it for court-related activities.
Well, what's the bond threshold?
Let's see. Well, we get about 400,000 a year in the fund, but I'm not sure what the bond company requires. I mean, if we did this, there'd be about 600,000 in the fund, and our payments are. We don't go by that big schedule they have. We pay like 35,000 a month instead of lump sum payments.
Well, do we have,
I don't think there's an issue with the money. That's what I can tell you. I don't think we're gonna run short.
Well, we may not run short this year, but we may run short next year.
Unless Mr. Sylvester stops bringing me those checks, then
Well, and I
I
guess
think we're-
because it's a fee revenue. It's not like sales tax
Fines-
we know
fines
is
and
on the
fees.
rise. So we don't have great revenue projections for that. And there have been times in the past when we've had to surplus, or we've had to take from reserves
that's-
for that.
I'm sure that's within the realm of possibility. I don't see it, but
Well, and then I guess, what information do you have to show that the $200,500 is in fact going to a court? Because this is going into a fund that could be used for other purposes. Because this is
Well, I
going
mean, it's-
into a other professional services line item in the Buildings and Grounds Fund.
as far as I'm concerned, I'm putting it in general fund in my
Right.
office. And then the comptroller will do something with the buildings and grounds. It will go into that line item as far as expenditures.
Well, I'll just say for this being on our agenda for the third time, I still feel like we don't have, it's like we're just being told everything's okay. You just should trust it. Everything's okay. And I feel like we don't have a clear answer from the bond attorneys. We're just being told, oh yeah, they told us it's fine. Somebody was supposed to get an email. Nobody's gotten an email. That just shouldn't be the way the court appropriates money. Anyway, and we have less than 2 months left in the year. I think we ought to deal with this when there really is a need for the money. We shouldn't rob a fund that is for a designated purpose unless we really have to. Because in a couple years, when Mr. Sylvester doesn't bring you a check and we're asked to pay this back, it's just going to compound the financial problems that we have to deal with. If we don't have to spend this money, we should not do this. So-
According to my calculations, our yearly payment is $420,000. And so if we've got $850,000, I'm thinking we could probably get by on $600,000. We could go for a whole year without having to take any money from anyplace else.
But I'll say this, we don't know what the threshold is that the bond people require us to keep in there in addition to what we're supposed to pay. And we also don't know if Buildings and Grounds in fact needs the money. I mean, we just heard Mr. Gale say that it may be moved because we may not need it. I mean, they've held on for 3 months and not needed it.
I understand that you're frustrated about it, but I don't see any issue with it, and nobody else sees an issue with it.
I do.
Well, by nobody else, what I mean is that the people that deal with this on a daily basis, I'm sorry.
But it's our vote.
Yes,
We're the
ma'am.
ones that have to vote. We're the ones that have to decide if this is a proper expenditure of funds coming from the proper fund and whether it's necessary. And I feel like for 3 months, we've asked questions and we get vague responses. We get people giving us the best that they've got. I mean, our treasurer, this really isn't his job. I just don't think the quorum court should operate on half information. If we're being asked to do something that is not routine and is abnormal, we should be given clear answers to our questions. And it's frustrating that we're not. So
J.P. Bond.
I move to table this indefinitely. Second.
Well, let's just redraw it. Let's cancel it. If you don't want to do it, just cancel it.
Made a motion to do that. Are they pulling it?
Did you actually make a motion to table it? Okay, and she seconded it.
Yeah.
I still have the floor.
So we have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second, and we need to vote on that. And so, all in favor of tabling this, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. All in favor of not tabling it, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, let's hear what Mr. Pond has to say first, and then we will.
I looked at this with much caution, and I had requested that Mr. Hill contact Association of Counties myself. He already had. And with the information that they got from Mr. Hill and everything else all around, with much caution and all that's been said and all the evidence, I move that we pass this.
Okay, I believe there is some more discussion. All right, Mr. Maxwell? Oh, I'm
Thank you,
sorry.
Mr. Chairman. Just one thing, I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, and I don't know that much about bonds and all the funds and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not really addressing that. But one of the things that I think we all try to do is be somewhat responsible and somewhat forward-thinking with how we spend our money. And the math that I've this has taken a step back from some of the legalities of it. But we're spending about $50,000 a year with benefits, salary, and all that for a security officer over at the other courthouse. Now that this has been moved here, we're not having to spend that additional security money plus whatever equipment, whatever. So this is very simple math, but in about 4 years, if this $200,000 is what it took to renovate this 5th floor and turn it into a courthouse, in 4 years, this is a net zero if you just look at that. I don't know if there are other efficiencies, other costs, whatever, but it does look like to me that we're making good use of some unused space up here and recouping some salary dollars. So again, there's another question about legalities, bonds, and all that kind of stuff. I'll leave that for someone that knows a whole lot more than I do about that. But I do think financially sound, this is not leaving us in the red when we're at the end of this. So I just want to make sure we don't lose that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Sue Masson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this first came up, I called legislative audit and talked to the auditor that does county business, and she said that this money can be used for other purposes, for the administration of justice purposes, if there is a surplus. And in my mind, until the bonds are paid off, we don't know if there's a surplus. I mean, I certainly wouldn't think I have a surplus just because I could make a payment 1 month. And it's my understanding that the bonds can't be paid off early. So we couldn't start chipping away at this if we wanted to. I would feel much better if we had a letter from the bond council telling us all, rather than somebody called and somebody said it should be okay. And I also am not happy with the way this was done to begin with. The proper thing to have happened would have been to come to us and say, we need to find some money to move Judge Taylor's courtroom and build it. And, I mean, it's after the fact. That's not the way we budget things. We try to anticipate and tailor the budget to our needs, and if a surprise comes up, then the same as we were dealing with the courts, come and ask us first. I mean, that's what is appropriate. And we could sit here and all do the math about saving the money and have a letter from the bond council. This makes me very uncomfortable to do business that way. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When this subject first came up, I asked our county attorney to send me a copy of the regulations. And J.P. Madison was correct when she said this is approved. Article 11 says very clearly that it can be all surplus in the county's court costs and fine fund after making the monthly deposits in the bond fund may be withdrawn from the court costs and fine fund and used at the option of the county for administration of justice purposes. It certainly fits within that category. Now, from what I understand, the $800,000 is a secondary fund that's backed up. From what I understand, we have a 1 year's payment set aside in addition to the $800,000.
No. There's about $850,000 in that fund, and that's all it's got.
Okay.
I mean, I get monthly payments from Kyle.
But the likelihood of these fines, these fees stopping is very small, next to none, because we know that incarceration rates continue to go up. As long as those incarcerations maintain steady or increase, we're going to see those funds go up. So on that basis, I'm going to be very supportive of this situation because I don't think there's a prayer that these funds are going to disappear or recede to the point that we'd be under any pressure to pay these bond funds. And money laying around in the county like that unused when we're trying to go ahead and minimize costs and improve our budget situation doesn't make any sense. So I will be very supportive of this, that we get it done and get it behind us.
Thank you. Is there further comments? Oh, yes, sir. I'm so sorry. Go right ahead.
JP Maxwell's talking about the money we're saving on these security issue, and we're still paying those people. We haven't really saved that money. That's just they're being used somewhere else. But one of my problems is we spent $500,000 on that court that's down there in the Terminella building already. And it's my understanding that none of that was used in the new court. Am I right on that?
And even,
So what happened to that $500,000 worth of courthouse equipment that was sitting down there? Is it still?
$500,000 was for the total build-out.
Well, I know there's a little cell and stuff there, but it was for the court.
The whole build-out. That was an unfinished building.
Well, I know, and a good portion of the bottom floor is still unfinished.
Right.
That's what you're gonna put the MSU in.
The CSU, yes.
CSU, I'm sorry. But, see, I've been in that courtroom itself, and the furniture and everything in there is beautiful, very nice condition.
And it's still intact, just like it is.
But I couldn't understand why it couldn't be moved up here and set in this court instead of going out and spending another $200,000 to put a courtroom in here. I'm talking about the bench itself and all that stuff, which is very expensive to build. Plus, I'm one of those that, when money is going to be spent like this, if it's not already in a line item, to come to the court and get it in the budget to start with, instead of doing this reimbursement on all this stuff. I don't like reimbursement. I like it to come through the court first, get approved, the money delivered to where it's needed, and get the work done. We've talked about the $600,000 we're gonna spend on that lower floor over there in the future. But I don't know whether that's ever been actually budgeted or not. It's just what it's gonna cost to do it. So anyway, I've got problems with this, 2 or 3 problems. So, I'm probably not going to support it, but I'm not going to stop it either. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Sue Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a small comment, but just because judges levy fines on people doesn't mean they always pay them. And actually, our circuit clerk and I had some discussions about that in the past week. I think right now there's a sizable amount of money that's owed for unpaid fines, and that's where this money comes from. So bear in mind that if times get bad and people get poorer, paying their fines might come after food for their kids.
Are there any other comments? Just Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe either Mr. Sylvester or Bobby Hill, either one, could help us. What's the annual intake for this fund over the last couple of years? What's history told us about it?
about $400,000 a year, what
Okay.
it brings in.
Has that been fairly consistent over the last 2 or 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see anything that would?
I think there's only 2 years left on the bond.
So in 2 years, we'd be paid for at about $420,000 a year?
I believe so. It's close to that.
Okay. Is there anything you know that we should factor in to not expect another $420,000 a year to come in, give or take? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do either one of you see anything that would make you nervous about expecting an average return this year?
It's been between like 350 to 450 for years and years. So, like you said, something could happen, but I'm not expecting it to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd just like to add one other comment, that is, all of us hopefully have been looking at the budget, And there is no money in our budget. I mean, we're going backwards in a big way. This would help that, because it may go into their fund, but there is no such thing as a revenue neutral, because if you spend it here, it has to come from there. They may not spend it, then it would go into the general fund and be part of the overall bucket. And so we need to if we have an opportunity to not take money out of the general, indirectly or directly, I think we need to take advantage of it, because this money is just sitting there. And we're asking people to cut. There are a number of departments that have really done a lot of things to be more efficient, and we're after everybody to do all they can to spend less, and we need to be consistent in what we're doing there. I don't disagree that we should have known up front, but the reality of the situation is this is where we are now, and we've kicked this can down the road. And so if it's all right with everybody else, let's go ahead and vote on this. Okay, so all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, and it passes, so it's going on to the full quorum court. Yeah, you had 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7.
Mr. Chairman, while they're discussing the raising of hands, Chief Gales, wasn't a lot, the courtroom upstairs, we were invited by Judge Woods to visit the 5th floor judge's chambers.
Yes.
And you were not lavish in your expenditures of that courtroom, but let me tell you what, it is lavish and beautiful because of the economies that you took.
That, all those facilities were made and manufactured by our inmate program out of wherever it is, their factory down there in central Arkansas. So that is all constructed with inmate craftsmen, and they did an excellent job at a very, very low price.
So if we were to have used another outside manufacturer craftsman of the same caliber.
Probably 2.5 times of what it would cost for what we paid.
So y'all are being mindful of the dollars that you spend, and yet the quality of the material and the product that y'all are producing. This courtroom, that courtroom upstairs has just solid wood, oak wood that is beautiful. And it's not something that's just pressed particle board that we're going to have to replace in 5 years. And the judge is it's going to get a lot of wear and tear.
I think it will be as durable as the old courthouse is that Judge Beaumont operates out of, because it's the same quality of wood.
Well, I was impressed with the craftsmanship and
Tremendous
the economies
craftsmanship.
that the Buildings and Ground director took to put this thing together. And I'm in support of this ordinance anyway, and I voted for it. So there you go. I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory.
Point of order, we need to move on. So now we've got an ordinance anticipating additional revenue of $10,000 in the law enforcement grant fund for 2018 and appropriating $10,000 from the law enforcement grant fund to the ADR grant budget for 2018.
Move to pass 8.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, the next thing is we have an ordinance anticipating revenues of $76,000 in the Arkansas Heritage Preservation Fund program, grant fund, and appropriating $76,000 to various line items in the AHPP budget for 2018. Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to pass this on to the full quorum court for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I'm just curious about it.
It's a restoration program.
I'm not sure where, can you tell us, Mr. Gales, where this money's going?
It's a restoration project to the, yeah.
I mean, it's sometimes concerning when you see that we need $15,000 worth of bridges and steel on the courthouse. So,
I didn't hear the question.
I'm just curious what I mean, I'm glad we're getting funds, but I'm just curious that the historic courthouse needs this much in the way of repairs.
This, the primary repairs, this is a continuous yearly grant that we've got on the historical reservation. It's, the first stage is capping all of the chimneys up there, which have caused us considerable leakage over the years. And it includes reflooring the bell tower and renovating, which is deteriorated, and water's leaking down through the building from that part of the building going down. So it's a weatherization, sealing, getting our courthouse back into a weather-tight condition. It's a 100% grant, no match.
Thank you very much.
Move to pass 9.1 to the full quorum court with a due
There's already a
prospect.
motion.
Yep,
And a second.
Oh,
So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll go on to the next one. It's an ordinance anticipating additional revenues of $827,951 in the DEM grant fund and appropriating the amount of $827,951 from the DEM grant fund to various homeland security budgets and security budgets.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next one is an ordinance anticipating additional $150,000 in the rural community grant fund and appropriating $150,000 from the rural community grant fund to the bridges and steel line item in the Parker Branch Road Bridge Mitigation Project.
Move to pass.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the next one is, it's an ordinance anticipating additional revenues of $325,000 in the drug court grant fund and appropriating the amount of $325,000 from the drug court grant fund to the SAMHSA 2018-2019 grant budget for 2018.
Second.
The next one is all in favor?
Aye.
There we go, can have myself. The next one is an ordinance anticipating additional $929,999.82 in the Brush Creek Road Bridge Fund of the FEMA Grant Fund and appropriating $929,999 for the unappropriated reserves of the road fund to the following line items in the road department budget for 2018. Okay, and then the next one is.
All in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
You can tell I'm getting ahead of myself. An ordinance,
Any public discussion?
an ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $330,000 in the road fund 2,000 and transferring $330,000 from the road fund 2,000 to the FEMA fund 3,400 and appropriating $330,000 to the 2018 FEMA 2017 flood budget.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, and as you can see that our grants person has been very, very busy. And we're very grateful for that. It's very, very helpful. So we're going to get in, excuse me, we're going to get into budget review. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a motion that we put all of the budget information on the website like it's always been. I had asked this last time, and it's still not there, and I've had several complaints about people looking. And it would also be helpful to me, just because I'd rather look at it on my computer than try to look it up on my phone. But I think the committee should take formal action for it to be placed there, because it appears that's necessary. So I would make the motion that the budget information for 2019 be put on the county's website.
Mr. Bowman.
Is it appropriate to publish numbers or put numbers out there that are not final?
It's been out there every year.
I
Okay.
didn't know that.
Well,
Oh, yeah, the final budget, but I didn't know it was the ongoing
Yep.
budget.
It's Our
never
budget,
seen
our
that.
proposed budget is a matter of public record. It should absolutely be put as a proposal on the website. It has been since, I don't know that it was the first year I was on the court, but pretty soon after that, it was available on the Comptroller's page. And if you look on the Comptroller's page, you can see not only the approved budget, but all the proposals that got to that. And people look for that information, and it should be there.
Okay, so it's on the Comptroller's
Second on that?
page, correct?
Second.
No, I'm just saying, that's where it has been before.
Yes.
Okay, just for point of clarification, thank you.
We'll rectify that.
So they'll make sure it gets done.
Let's vote.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. All right, so Mr. Gales, you'll see if that gets done, you and Shannon.
It'll be done.
Thank you. The next thing we have is the collector's office, and I believe that you're requesting an additional person.
Hello. Yes, I'm actually requesting a grade 11 to expand our Springdale office. We have 2 people in our Springdale office. It's the busiest office that we have. And the assessor's office has 4 people, and our 2 people are trying to keep up with the 4 people that are up there for the assessors. So it puts a lot of strain on us to keep up with what they're doing.
Okay, thank you very much for explaining that, and you can see that the cost on that, it looks like altogether that's $37,465. Does that sound right?
27,388.
Does that include acres and all the other things? Or is that just the salary?
I think it's just the salary.
That's the base salary.
And about how much, well, I guess it doesn't really matter, I mean, at this point, the exact amount of money. Is there any discussion on this?
I have.
I didn't see his hand. J.P. Bowman, and then Ms. Seki.
Well, I was talking to our collector about this item beforehand, and I asked her, there's about $750 million in her automation fund, and I asked about the use of that money versus other opportunities there. Would you explain to us about what your plans are in that regard?
Well, I have cushioned it a little because we're going to have to redo our office in Springdale as well because I don't have room to expand. And I'm not sure, I have to talk to the owner of the building and see how that goes. So I'm not sure if that's going to come out of my budget or if they would make the office at the Springdale Revenue Office. And so I have cushioned it so that if it happens, I can, redo my office up there.
But from what I understand, those funds would come out of your automation fund?
Yes.
Okay, so this wouldn't be coming out of general funds?
No.
Okay, so basically it's just a matter of approval of a new employee?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So all of this is going to come out of your automated fund?
Even the employee will come
Even
out.
the employee.
Mhm.
So do you know if we contractually have an agreement with the land or the landowner, building owner, to do any kind of build-outs where they do, because you're improving their building?
I have to go through the district manager of the revenue office, and then they go through Little Rock, and then they go through the building owner.
Sure.
So we are actually working on it right now.
Okay. to see if there's any kind of build-out money that he has.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay. It's been motion's been made and seconded. Butch Pond?
Yes, I appreciate this, you taking action on this, actually. I personally, because it's with that being a very busy office, we want to be able to get people in and out of there as quick as they can, so more of them don't come down here and have to go through this, go through this security.
That's the reason they're going there, is they don't want to do
Yes.
the security here.
Well, yes, ma'am, I appreciate that they are, because the more bottlenecking we have down here, because we've got several people come in here for all kinds of business. I thank you very much for helping the folks up there. To them, it's a convenience.
Yes.
For us, it's efficiency. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, so thank you very much, Ms. Wood.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing is the sheriff's office pay plan, step pay for the certified, certified positions. Who's going to speak to that?
Oh, if you notice, they're all sitting on the back row hiding. But they're cheering loud inside. How do you want to proceed, Bill? Just tell me.
Well, I'd like to hear from the people on this, around the horseshoe, hear what your thoughts are on this. And so we'll start with Ms. Harpson.
I'm in favor of the step system if we had the money. I know you came forward with 225,000 or 200 and something thousand from salary sweeps, and that you reduced buying cars this year down to 6 and using that other money to be used to cover this. In a way, that's not really new money. It's still money that's going to have to be spent eventually, because you're going to have cars. You reduce the number, that means we have to have more cars next year. The only way I will support this is that we have a new stream of revenue from somewhere that's going to pay for this. Just taking it out of one pot and putting it in another pot, really, it all comes back around and we still have the same amount of money. And I realize that people that are in public law enforcement put their life on the line every day, and they need to be reimbursed for it. But until this county, until the people, and we're getting ready to build a jail also, I just would like to postpone this until next year and see, but I can't vote on it until we vote on a revenue source to support it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the sentiment of the entire court, that they recognize the need. And you said it, they need it, they deserve it. We got to find the funding stream. That is a difficult decision, but I will tell you that it really boils down to, this has been about a 2-year process that, kind of like the jail, we can kick it down the road as long as we want, I guess, but I don't think that's the right thing to do, and I don't think you think that's the right thing to do. I think that we need to address this. I've done the work, I've done the legwork, I've done the justification. Everybody on the court agrees with what I've proposed. It really boils down to a budgetary issue. I sat down with Mr. Ussery, and as budget chair, he made a request that we don't move forward with the 100% of our infusion, and put forward a request that if we could keep the actual new money at $300,000 above what was already proposed in the budget, which included the 3% increase, that we could move forward on that proposal. That is not my desire to reduce the full amount. It just puts us further behind the 8 ball. If we move off doing anything for another year, we're going to be that much further behind. And that is not the right thing to do. I understand your dilemma. Wouldn't want your job, but I'm pretty sure you don't want mine either. So I did everything I was asked to do. We did address it through capital. That is new money. But if you'll go back to actually whenever Bill asked us to reduce our budgets by 3%, we reduced the enforcement side by way more than 3% based on last year's numbers. But we're not even addressing that in this proposal. I went into exactly what our conversation was. I think that you asked Shannon to come up with a spreadsheet based on no more than a certain percentage raise across the board. I satisfied that request to the best of my ability. My request to you is to figure out a way. But please don't kick it down the road. I mean, just find a way. This is something that's been needed to be done for a long time. I was finally able to get Johansson, get the accurate numbers in as to what you needed. The right way to do this is not to kick it down the road. So.
Well, I really don't want to kick it down the road.
Then don't.
But there are 14 other people on this court besides myself, and we have some hard decisions to make about money.
Sure do.
And, are we going to make those? And I think we have to have a commitment of whether we're going to do that or not before we can support this. Thank you.
Mr. Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've talked an awful lot about charging cities for, jail services on a daily basis. Do you have appropriate numbers to tell us how much increase there'd be in cash flow for the jail if we did that?
I don't have it with me. I think we talked about that at the jail law enforcement meeting, and I did have the numbers then. And they were ballpark, Harvey. Do you recall, or are you just asking me to bring it up in another meeting? Let's just go with, and Jack may still be back there. He may have better recall, but it looked like, based on the new ability to charge cities for felony arrests prior to their official charging, which has historically been about a 30-day period of time. Okay? We'll all agree on that. And if that remains to be the standard, then based on the numbers over the last year, where Fayetteville, Springdale are going to be the big horses in this thing, I think that it would generate, if the numbers stayed the same, it would be new money collected in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $750,000. And that's a swag, because that could be low, it could be high. And this is the first year we've had the ability to even consider that. It was a ruling in Mississippi County, I think, that finally ruled in the favor of counties. So that's real money. And on the misdemeanor side, we were talking about doing a daily fee on that. Seemed like that was it was a push with, like Fayetteville, we charge a one-time booking fee. They would actually save money based on history and the actual numbers, just a little bit, but it was pretty close to the same amount of money. Where we would gain is through the small towns, and then when Springdale shuts their doors a year down the road. Of course, we never had to deal with those numbers on the misdemeanor side.
Yeah. Sheriff, my impression has been, according to what I saw in the papers, that Benton County has been doing this for a while, haven't they?
Yeah, yeah. On the misdemeanor, daily
On
fee.
just
No,
on the
nobody's done the felony because we didn't have the ability
I see.
to
Okay.
charge for felons,
Okay.
ever.
So it was on the misdemeanors they were charging for?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I thought it was across the board. Well, you know, I'm going to be proposing that happen because we know that on a routine basis, the cities are continuing to take more money from our funds based on population growth because most of the population growth is going into cities instead of the counties. And we're going to have to do something because that, for instance, Springdale is going to close their jail. That's a revenue saving choice, and I understand their choice. But it's also adding to our cost. So we're going to have to do something to try to take care of that issue. And the only thing I can see to do that is go ahead and start charging cities for their prisoners. And so that'll be part of the picture as far as I'm concerned. I'll certainly be proposing that all along. Thank you.
Eva Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At some point, this court has to make our law enforcement officers a priority. The sheriff has been talking to us about this proposal and about the reasons we need this proposal for many years. I don't think we quite understand the cost to the county in taking in new officers, training them, and having them go to Fayetteville. It harms every officer out there that they work with folks who are inexperienced or whatever. And so at some point, we have to just make it a priority. And to say we can't afford it when for years we've afforded everything we've wanted to do when we haven't had the money to do it. If you look at the numbers, we have new revenue in the general fund this year is $27.5 million, and we have $30.6 million in requested budgets. It was about the same story last year. We funded it. So how can we say we can't afford this when that's the way we've budgeted for years? Because we have always relied on our reserves. Now, I will say that's not smart budgeting because we have constantly budgeted by using our reserves that are dwindling without any plan for how we're going to replenish those reserves. Every time it comes up that we talk about raising taxes, everybody freaks out. And I understand why. It's not an attractive option. But this is going to become a real problem. At some point, we can't continue to budget this way. But to say to our law enforcement officers, we can't afford this when this scenario is no different from the scenario last year and the year before. When we gave the major market increases where everybody got at least a 5% raise, we couldn't afford that based on new revenue. We couldn't afford the raise we gave last year based on new revenue. So we shouldn't sit here and tell Sheriff Helder we can't afford the raises that your people deserve because we can't afford them, because we can. And I'm going to say right now, we have barely scratched the surface on this budget. But I'm looking right here. The road department has $10.5 million in projected new revenue. They are asking to spend in their requested budget $10.4 million. So they're actually requesting less than their new revenue. But they are sitting on $3.3 million. They're going to have $2.2 in unappropriated reserves. How can we say we can't afford things in the general fund when the road department is going to be sitting on $2.2 million they're not asking to spend? We can make this work. We just have to look at all the numbers and make it come together. But I don't feel good about telling our law enforcement officers we can't afford a raise for you when the road department is sitting on $2.2 million they're just going to have in the bank all next year so that we can say, have this conversation again next November. And I'm not robbing the road fund. They're not asking to spend it. They are not asking to spend it. They have 1.3 today in reserves. Today, and they just got $300,000 in FEMA money, which I would imagine they won't use by the end of the year. So they're going to end the year with probably $1.5 million that they're not spending. Now, if they told us they needed it and they were asking to budget it, it would be a different scenario, but they are not. So I would challenge all of you to decide what our priorities are. Letting the road department sit on $1.5 million in money they don't need, or paying our police officers what they deserve. I fully support this. I don't know why you've been asked to not fund it at 100%. I think it should be funded at 100%. That's what I was working with Kelly on. That's what I want to do. And this court should find a way to do it. If we can't do it all, let's find a way to do a meaningful portion of it and commit to do it. Because otherwise, our law enforcement officers will just continue to suffer, and that's not fair. So look at the full budget and decide what we can really do. But shaving off $10,000 here and there, we can brag about that. That ain't going to get us there. We got to look for chunks of $1 million. That's what we need. And at some point, this game of spending our reserves is going to come to an end. And we're going to have to figure out a way to do that. But I fully support this. I want to fund it at 100% if we can. I realize 100% may not be possible, but we should get close. We should get close because we can look. If you look at page 36 of your packet, 16.1, and the total budget summary, we can make it work. Thank you.
My, if I may.
Yes.
My understanding from Budget Chair Ussery was that if we weren't able to pare this down, the rest of the county would suffer when it came to cost of living raises. And I need to make sure the court understands that the sheriff's office actually does have half of the county employees. By removing these 82, taking them out of the cost of living section, I've still got around 220 employees that I'm certainly going to go to bat for on this cost of living thing. So I couldn't in good conscience, based on our conversation, jeopardize raises for the rest of the county employees, of which my 220 are still about 3/4 of the county employees. So don't think that I'm willing to jeopardize that. I'm standing for all employees, but remember, this is apples and oranges. This group is very unique in the job that they do, the hours they work, the compensation should be the same. All of law enforcement in Northwest Arkansas draws from the same pool. Think about that. It's not that I'm just losing them to another agency after I've trained them. Why would they come to work for me when they could go to work at Fayetteville or Springdale with an immediate raise right off the bat? So this is very important to the future of the Washington County Sheriff's Office Enforcement Division. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson, speak loudly, please, just like me.
Well, I've sat and listened to this, and Eve is right. There's no option to go on any farther without doing this. When I run for this job, law enforcement was the most important thing that I want to protect. And that hasn't changed one bit. And it's not going to change. It can be done. I've seen us go here when we've had to borrow money to buy cars. We had second group, and the third group was on the third group of cars, still paying 3. We paid all that off in 1 year. This has to be done. Now more than ever. And I've never voted against him on anything, because that's the main thing I'm interested in this county is law enforcement. I'm not worried about the new desk if everything we have is spick and span. But these guys go out there day or night, lay it on the line. When I come on this court, I was amazed to find that we had at times 2 people in the county at night by yourself. You're sitting over south of Siloam Springs, and you're in Spring Valley. You're not going to do any good. What's going to happen? You have no control over what you can't go in there and do anything because you're too far away. And I actually one morning a few years ago pulled out on the highway going to the airport at 3 in the morning, and there was 5 cars at a car stop about 2 blocks from my house. 3 of them were sheriff's office, 1 highway patrol, 1 Springdale. I got relatives in law enforcement. Got some in Springdale right now that is not law enforcement. This just needs to be done. I don't see there's any excuse not to do it. We just got to figure it out. That's all I really got to say. Just remember, we got to figure it out. Thank you.
Ms. Sue Madison, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the Sheriff's Association or any other statewide body looking at this issue of reimbursement from the state to see if, there's a session coming up?
Are you talking about prisoner reimbursement? Yeah, I mean, the Sheriff's Association, it's a continual discussion, and I know that one of our former sheriffs just ran for the legislature, just texted me as I was on my way to this meeting that he had been in a meeting with the governor, and they brought that up then. So it'll be talked about. And I know that Mr. Ussery has talked to several people that are willing to look into it, but the association will always address this issue on an annual basis.
Well, I know they're talking about cutting taxes. I think it would be absolutely criminal for the state to cut taxes and not take care of their expenses like this. I mean, why should we be paying for expenses that are rightfully the state's and them not cover our cost? I mean, it makes me downright angry. Well, keep after it, and let's try to work on the legislature now that we know who will be there. Thank you.
Butch Pond?
Charging a daily fee was brought up earlier, and you answered accordingly. And it seems we've kind of moved the discussion away from that, which that is a substantial way to cover a stream of revenue to cover a lot of these expenses, to take less money away from general to put into the jails. Now, if anybody's serious about that, that needs to be discussed first, because that is a source of revenue. We can buy the cow with that. Well, as long as some of them are getting the milk free, they're not interested in buying the cow. It's unpopular. We're not, but if you're serious about it, that needs to be discussed first. It needs to be discussed early on, because all these little towns and the cities, they're working on their budget right now, and they need to know if we're going to start charging them a daily fee. And that way we can be a little more comfortable to do what we know that we need to do for our deputies. It is a serious issue. We've got the same problem in the road department. We're having trouble keeping heavy equipment operators, and there does have to be some money in the reserve for the road department. We don't know when we're going to have another bad winter with ice storms and have to replace 2/3 of the windshields on the graders from the ice-covered tree limbs, breaking the windshields. When roads we've got to repair when it thaws and freezes and then thaws again and that sort of thing. It's ridiculous to think about robbing the road department that's already hurting as far as keeping their employees, and having money there to match with FEMA when there's floods and bridges that wipe out. So I'm just saying, if anybody's serious about going to that charging a daily fee, I know it's unpopular, but it does need to be done first. These cities working on their budget need to know that that's what's going to happen. Now, I've said it twice. Thank you.
Mr. Ussery, before you move forward, just to address what Butch just said briefly, we've got a contract with Fayetteville on the booking fee, and it's already been submitted, and it's in the county attorney's office, but I had an email conversation with Brian, and he indicated that the contract's on hold up there until the court does decide whether they're going to move to a daily fee or honor the existing contract. I notified Chief Tabor chief of police at Fayetteville, he notified the mayor. They're notified that that could be a possibility. So just so you know, thank you.
Thank you very much. Once we finish this discussion, I think we probably need to make a motion that we move forward with this to get the wheels turning. I've asked some time back for what it would take. I haven't heard back yet. So maybe if we make a motion to do that, I think that might be beneficial to all of us. Mr. Maxwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess two things. One is, I do think, to be fair to the cities or whatever, before they budget, I do think we need to bring this question to the table, and instead of floating it out there and them not really knowing how to react to us, I think the right thing to do is to vote it up or down and move forward, or leave it alone, but make it final. But I wanted to ask a question with this new Mississippi County ruling. So practically speaking, is that something that will happen on its own? Does the court need to act on something like that? Is that something that, how does that process for us to follow that same track if that's something we choose? Or does it just happen now that that's now out of the box? Is that going to happen for all counties in Arkansas that house municipal prisoners?
It doesn't just automatically happen. It's something that each county decides on their own if they're going to charge other cities, other entities to hold their prisoners. So it's totally within the court's purview to make that decision. You're the lawmakers, and I'm the law enforcer. If you guys decide that's what you want to do, I'm on board. You know, we'll start collecting. It'll be a nightmare for us for a while, trying to keep up with all of it, but we'll figure it out. When I threw that number out, let's be honest with each other about this. When you start tying dollars to arrests, they're going to find more creative ways on arrest. Some of them won't come to jail, a smaller percentage. But I don't know if Matt's still sitting back there, but you want to talk about the heat getting turned up on the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office, and our whole judicial system. These cities are going to start screaming bloody murder, basically. Hurry up, you know, and he's going to get killed, you know. So there's a lot of pieces in play in this whole process. So just understand that $750,000 number will probably shrink some, but I don't think it'll be significantly, but it will be an interesting project, to say the least.
Thank you. I think that's also something that we need to, in a timely fashion, decide what we're going to do with, so that we don't leave everybody from our prosecuting attorney all the way down to the municipal authorities wondering which direction we're going to go. So I do think that's something that we need to act on fairly quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Zaki?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to talk to Brian Lester, our county attorney, this afternoon, but he had to, I guess he has a sick child, about drafting an ordinance specifically for this today regarding these revenue streams. But what I would like from you, Sheriff, if you would be so kind, you already charge Fayetteville $50-something booking fee.
62.
If we could do a quick rundown list of, I'm going to charge misdemeanor booking fee, or booking fees, BOP, misdemeanor, whatever it is, and give us a list of what you would propose to charge the cities that is fair and equitable for them as quickly as possible. And if Kelly can get that to me by tomorrow, that would be great, of what you all want in order for this to make it happen, and then have in works for when we do draft an ordinance following the Mississippi ruling on charging for felonies. And what would that amount be for your office? I don't think this court needs to set those fees because we don't know, but you do. And if we could have those numbers in place and get an ordinance and talk to everybody, you know, just with the, Mr. Durrett, what's this going to cause, and the cities, that way we can know and get this before the next quorum court meeting. Could we do that? Because I'm sure you have those numbers already in mind.
Yeah, I provided them at the jail law enforcement. That was based on a $60 a day, or a,
But that was just
a day
misdemeanor, yeah.
Well, that was
that's a
felons
daily
also.
fee.
That was felons also. And that's actually about $2 less than what we should charge. We've got contract with the feds, $62 a day. Madison County's paying $62 a day. Fayetteville's paying $62 per bookend. I think that's the rate. I think that's what we're asking the
So that's
state to
what you
do.
want.
We're asking everybody to pay the actual cost
And
of
the
operating.
cities.
So I think if we're gonna do it, you basically across the board, you just tell them, this is our actual cost and this is
And it
what it's
is
gonna.
for, okay, what are you charging for felonies? They already know. So that's already
We're not
established in
charging
contract?
anybody for felons. We've never had the ability to do that.
Okay.
Okay, and it's new, with the Mississippi County ruling.
I'm sorry, you didn't say felonies, I meant feds. That's
The
what I meant to
feds
say.
are
the feds.
62, and that's a renegotiated contract about every 3 to 5 years.
So we don't need to include that in the ordinance?
No.
With the, who would you want included in this one?
It would be our municipal,
Okay.
whoever utilizes our jail other than the federal folks, like, we've already got a contract with Madison County.
Okay,
It would be all the cities within Washington County, basically, and the University of Arkansas Police Department.
and U of A.
In the state.
State police do arrest some, but yeah, state police,
Might as well have it in there.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I'll get that list for you.
get that, and then I want to get this drafted by our county attorney, so that way we can present it at the next quorum court. Would that be good?
That'd be fine with
Okay.
me.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Harbison?
So if we charge a daily rate, then the booking fee is going to go away. I think we need to keep the booking fee for those people that bail out. And then charge whatever we decide per day for each prisoner that's held in jail. I think we were looking at doing away with the booking fee, but I think we need the booking fee plus. Their booking fee would be 1 day in jail, whatever we decide that is. And then if they're in there 30 days, 30 times that. So I think what I was picking up, that we were doing away with the booking fee, and I don't think we need to do that. I want to address the other issue that came up on the surplus, the so-called surplus that's in the road department. There is no surplus in the road department. We have 1,000 miles of hard service road, we have 1,000 miles of dirt road, and we have 1,000 miles of lanes that are not upkept by the county. And those residential drives, they're called residential drives, need to be brought into the county system. Now, you've got to remember, we've got a 1/2-cent sales tax that goes away in 10 years. And we're on, what, our 4th or 5th year of that. We need to be able to either contract out some of these jobs, and because we're short in the road department, just like they are short in the sheriff's department. I think those two departments need to be evaluated differently. If this court needs to make a decision to fund law enforcement. But funding it out of the road department, I don't think is an option. We need to look at the hard facts, and if we want to fund the road department, then we need to look at raising the millage. Now, if you can't stomach that, then you are not really supporting the sheriff's department. So, that's to say that we have extra money in the road department. Yes, there's a little pot of money sitting there, but it could be used tomorrow. I want to support our sheriff's department just as more than anyone else, because I rely on the sheriff's department to protect the citizens, myself, and all the rural citizens in Washington County. And they deserve a decent salary compared to other law enforcement agencies in the county, but not at the expense of the road department. I just feel that that is not appropriate to compare the two. We're talking about the sheriff's department. We need to fund the sheriff's department, but we don't need to be robbing someone else to fund another department. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Now, I'm not going to take a long time with my comments. They're going to be very short, very sweet.
Sweet.
I'm going to solve your problem for you. All you have to do is increase property tax 1.1 mil. Maximize your property tax, and you'll bring in over $3 million a year, which will solve, I'll vote against it when you vote on it, but it will still pass 12-2, or 12-3. So don't worry about it. I won't be here next year to worry about getting reelected like the rest of you will. But that's the solution to the problem. Ms. Harbison just brought it up, trying to steal my thunder. But that's what this county is at the point of going broke. So you got to look to where is real revenue. Where can real revenue come from? It can either come from sales tax or it can come from property tax, one or the other. And that will pay bills without any problem. The property tax would not be as big an issue to me as the sales tax would be, because I'm old enough they can't increase my property tax. But I still want to see the sheriff get his people paid. And I want to see things taken care of around here. And if you're going to do that next year, you're going to have some new revenue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think that is classic transparency, all the way to the back collarbone.
That's right. Okay, Ms. Madsen.
I'm going to echo what J.P. Pond said. We can talk about this ordinance, about fees for the cities. I do not think in good conscience we can impose it until 2020, because it's too late to do it for 2019. You cannot do that to our cities when they are doing budgets now. So furthermore, even if we have an ordinance drafted next month, it won't be effective for a while. So I just think we need to sort of separate out the issues here. We can look at that as a future revenue source, but it is absolutely unfair to our cities to suddenly say, hey, by the way, starting January 1, we're going to impose a booking fee on you. Just find a way to pay for that real fast. I will also point out to you, all of us have some portion of cities in our districts. I feel certain of that. Those folks that live in those cities already pay for the jail. They pay a sales tax for the jail. They pay millage to the county that supports the jail. So we're talking about making them pay more for it. And I just want to keep that in mind, because in the Mississippi County case that the sheriff has talked about, there were a lot of these arguments that we're going to hear from the cities. And one of them was that you can't impose a booking fee on us, or a fee on us, because we already pay. The cities already pay. Now, the city of Farmington may not be the one that writes the check, but the citizens in Farmington are paying the sales tax and paying the millage already. So we need to think about that. I don't think this issue of imposing fees on the cities should be done just like that. It's something that needs to take lengthy discussion and dialogue with the cities about how to do it appropriately. So I think we need to set that out of sight as a revenue source for 2019. It is something we need to talk about in terms of funding the jail, but trying to rush an ordinance through on that is not appropriate. We can put an ordinance through for discussion purposes, but I just do not think it should be something that is on the cities until at least 2020. So It's just not fair. You all know, when we talked about changing the road and the general millage, how many mayors we had to show up the next time. They said, please give us a warning if you're going to do something like this. Give us a warning. And, well, but we don't have any talks about what the numbers are. Nothing's in writing. Nothing's been proposed. We talk about it. And I don't think that they're voting on their budgets now. So we can't do that. And we also ought to be prepared to hear back from the cities that their folks already pay for the jail. We need to figure out how to pay for this sheriff's race somewhere else. And don't tell me we're robbing a fund when they're not asking to spend $2.2 million that they have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Pond.
I might want to clarify that because of other statements that were made. If you raise my millage, my taxes will go up. My property tax is frozen because I'm 65. But that's just the appraisal part of it, or the value, the appraisal value. When you do a millage increase, my taxes go up anyway. And I know about how much that is because when we reduced it 7 years ago, that allowed my wife and me, it paid for about half of what the bill cost when we went out to eat one time annually. And that would only be like at McDonald's or somewhere like that. So that's what it is. It will. My taxes will go back up, and we'll just have mac and cheese one night instead of going and getting Big Macs. But and other than that, we've done this discussion over and over again about somewhere or other having the cities kick in. Oh, we did it, and every time it's, well, you got to give us some warning. Well, I think they know by now that we're kind of short. They've known about it for years, and we get the same message every time it happens. Well, you got to give us some warning. You can't do this all at once. Well, they have been several times, and so I'm just saying, yes, it's not popular, but we can't print money. It's got to come from someplace. And it looks like we need to buy another cow down there where we got we don't have, we only got one cow, and now the jail's just full. And we're going to have to buy another cow. We got to have money to buy another cow. Thank you.
Mr. Bowman?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you finally recognized me.
You were in line, sorry.
I'm telling you. Well, first off, I want to say that, I think I brought this thing up way back yonder, and my thought processes all along has agreed with what Eva said about not imposing this until 2020. So if we go ahead and do this thing and let them know a year ahead of time, I think they ought to be well prepared to deal with the situation. And that's not inappropriate. I'd agree 100% with that. As far as the road issue is concerned, I'm chair of that budget that deals with that all the time. And I've talked to Mr. Gales at length about the amount of money in the budget and about things going on the roads. And I can tell you, I've talked with him in length about this situation. The plans are to dramatically improve the road situation out here in the county next year because, number one, they haven't been able to keep people on the job to get the jobs done that he had laid out. We've got to go ahead and figure out how to keep enough employees in the county on the road department to get the jobs done. And number two, we're going to go ahead and look at trying to increase the number of miles that are chip and sealed and that are blacktopped. And the blacktop is really the long-term better than chip and seal because it has such a long life compared to chip and seal. It's an expensive process, but it's dramatically needed. And just because we hadn't had a session every month to talk about. That doesn't mean that it's not in the works. And, you know, I think Mr. Gales has done a phenomenal job in that department. Charles and his crew out there are kicking tails and taking names. They're doing a fantastic job. And so to anticipate taking that money away from the road department is not very intelligent. Great plans are on the way to dramatically improve. But I agree again with Ms. Madison that we need to go ahead and look at a imposition of a charge to the cities to be implemented on January 1, 2020. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for finally recognizing me.
Ms. Harbison.
It needs to be, I'm going to amend Harvey 2019 because they know we're going to increase the fee because it's Benton County has increased it, and we have just last 6 months, last year, we've discussed increasing the fee. They know we're going to increase the fee. It needs to go this thing, and also, we only get 18% of the sales tax. 18%. We run the whole county. We run the whole courthouse on 18%, and they get the rest. Springdale and Fayetteville get a majority of the rest. So to say that we are causing them financial hardship is not true. They just need to rearrange some of their money and their priorities. We need to take care of the jail, and we need everybody to be on board when we go to ask for a sales tax to build the new pod, because if everybody's not on board, it's not going to pass. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Yes. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My theory is that surprises are really only good on your birthday. Any other day, it's never a good thing. And I just mentioned earlier that I don't want us to surprise or sneak up on the cities if we bring something. That's why I think it's probably good that we bring this issue up and settle it. But I do have kind of a secondary thought to that, and is we get surprised every year when we have to infuse more money into the jail. And nobody gets to break that to us gently. Whenever we see, I'm looking here at 16.1 and I see a red $847,899. And I didn't really get a lot of warning on that, except for it happened last year and the year before that and the year before that, because we have to. So I think it is a little bit, reality in life just hands us these prisoners and we take them, and if they stay 2 days or they stay a day or they stay 30 days or whatever, we get surprised every time that happens. And we reach in our pocket and general reserves and we fund it because that's our state mandate and we do it. That's what we have to do. And at the end of the day, these prisoners are coming from everywhere in the county. Some of them come from out in the sticks and they're our prisoners and we pay for them from start to finish. Some of them are state prisoners, some of them are federal prisoners, and some of them are municipal prisoners. So I really don't think that the cities are going to be surprised. One is we've brought this up multiple times, so I know we've talked about this. And secondly, this is the time of year we do our budgets every year. And every year we come to this same point where it's like, well, we don't want to spring it on. They're voting on their budgets as well. And then next year about this time, it'll be the exact same conversation. So I think we've had that conversation enough times. They should know that it's something that to be considered. And at the end of the day, it's prisoners that are being, or people that are being arrested in those municipalities, and we all have to pay our part. We haven't gotten a lot of notice before cities have canceled their emergency services and we had to pick them up. We haven't always gotten a lot of, we got a little notice that Springdale's closing their jail because there's a process to it, but that's not always the case. So when I look at this, I think we all just have to absorb, whether we like the surprises or not at a county or a city level. I think we have to absorb the cost of what it takes to run the government, whether it's inside our county or inside our cities. So I really genuinely do not think that the cities are going to be surprised. And I think if we decide to do something like this, I don't think that January 2019 is going to be too early. They'll have to build into their budgets like we're building into our budget. when we have less tax dollars coming in to maintain the jail than what it costs to keep the prisoners there. So I think that's just maybe time we all share in that equally as we contribute to the jail equally. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. A couple of things that I think are significant. Excuse me. The judge has been talking to the mayors about this for some time. And I believe if what I heard you say earlier, that you had talked to Fayetteville, and they have that on hold. And so there's time for us to do something if we act quickly. And so my suggestion is that we find a revenue stream and try to do what you're going to do. We can't do it tonight, but we will find a revenue stream, and we will figure out a way to get ourselves through this. And so what I'd like to do is to secure the revenue stream, or at least have an anticipated revenue stream in order to cover this, because with our budget the way it is right now, we're going to be down to almost no reserves in the budget, the direction that we're going and how much that would cost. So if you're okay with that, at least holding on for that long, we'll certainly see what we can do.
Do I have a choice?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it certainly has not fallen on deaf ears, and we're going to do all we can do.
If I may ask a question, when do we anticipate probably voting on the budget overall? What, do y'all have another meeting planned, or what are we looking at?
Well, we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to convene this coming Tuesday, and we're going to try to hash the budget out and get it passed on at that time.
So Tuesday's the day?
Because we're trying to get it into the November Quorum Court meeting if we can.
Okay.
And I guess a couple of things. One is, in just a moment, we're going to be talking about the millage. And I guess since Luck had it, I'll say Luck, that's not even right. But since I won't be here, I can certainly talk about it more freely than I could probably if I was trying to get reelected. But I've always had a plan on that. And the two things that I'm looking at is, I want the county to be sustained. What we're doing now is not sustainable. And so the two things I'm looking at is, we're going to look at the millage, we're going to look at charging the cities. I hope that we can have something informal writing for the cities within the next week. That's my goal, is to have something by Quorum Court meeting that we can talk about next Thursday. Excuse me. And we should know something then. Tonight, if it's okay with you, I'd like to go ahead and talk about the millage. If you don't have anything else to say on this, I mean, I know.
No, I mean, I could rail on and on. I appreciate each one of you and your comments about law enforcement. We know that you all are supportive, but it really is going to boil down to finding a way to make this happen. And I'm confident you'll do that. So we'll see you Tuesday, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next thing on every time, this time of year, we have to pass the millage for all of the cities, I mean, all the school districts and all of those things. And that certainly is, it's on the budget, on that part of the budget meeting. And so I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the millage. I will tell you that Washington County is at 3.5%. We're just about the 3.9, I'm sorry. 3.9 mils is where we're at the moment. I can just tell you that almost every other county is at 5%, which is 5 mils. Sorry, I get the two confused. My mind is always way ahead of where I'm at. But
JP Ussery, are you on agenda item 18?
yes, ma'am, I'm skipping 17 for the moment and
Okay.
jumping right to 18 because it falls right in with what we were doing. And people have already talked about it before. And so we might as well finish the discussion on this, and then we'll come back to 17. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the millage. Ms. Harbison.
I don't like tax increases any better than anybody else. But, you know, we reduced the millage by 0.5 of a mil over 7 years, that was $10.5 million. If we had only reduced it 1.5 mil or 2.5 mils, we would have had $5 million more dollars. And I can tell you that nobody knew they got a millage reduction. The publicity of passing it, no one's going to really see that much of an increase on their property tax. So I'm ready to do the hard thing and increase the millage to 5 mils, because we cannot continue to cut. I know it's unpopular, but I think it's time that we stood up and we did our job and take the consequences, I guess. Anyway, I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
There's one other thing that I think we all need to be aware of, and that is there's a bill before the state legislators, and it looks like it's going to pass. There's a high likelihood, very high likelihood that it'll pass, and that is that people that have been in their house for some time get a homestead. It's called the Homestead Act, and you get a credit on your taxes, and that's going to be increased by, I believe it's about $50 a year. And by the time you look at the average house, they're probably still going to get back more than what we're going to take if we were to do this. And so that's another consideration that this might be a good time to do this. But I think we're at the point where we've got to do something, because we cannot continue to cut. We're not sustainable. One of the things, and I apologize, I don't have the numbers yet, but in Washington County, we all are aware that it's been growing very rapidly. And you're thinking, well, if it grows rapidly, our taxes should go up accordingly. Well, Washington County, I would venture to guess that 2/3 of the buildings that are going up are apartments. And that's where the revenue comes from. A person's going to pay, an individual is going to pay a lot less in their taxes for property taxes than somebody who's got a $200,000 house. And so while there have been more people moving here, there's a little bit more revenue. There's a lot more demand for our services. And so somewhere you have to make them sustainable. And so that's what we've got to do. We've got to figure out how going forward we can make this budget work. It's not fair to the guys out here. They're in the trenches every day and say, you have to cut, you have to cut. Well, you have two choices. You can either cut or you can find a revenue stream. And if we're going to continue to give the services the way that we have, and then while I'm on the bandwagon, there's one other thing that I'd like to say, and that is that always, and if I was a realtor, I'd be the same way. The realtors are the ones that are going to throw a fit over this. But I can tell you that the realtors have benefited greatly from the things that are going on in the county the last 2 or 3 years. I was talking to somebody about a loan this week on a house. He pulled up in the computer that house, got all the details right there. He said, yeah, I used the data scout. I just went down to the county and everything was there that I needed. Well, that cost somebody something. It saved him a lot of time and money. And so I'd venture to guess that they've probably saved a lot more money than their taxes are going to go up by the benefits of what we do here every day. And I'm very grateful for that. So having said that, we'll just go ahead with the discussion. Ms. Ecke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have researched other counties, not just here in Arkansas, just looking at their budgets and how they organize it and justify it. And when you look at it, most of them have the maximum millage that they charge. But because they have the maximum millage and sales tax seems to be about average on some. The further north you go, the higher it gets, especially in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But what I liked about it was the way because they're getting this revenue stream, you're able to have, I think it was 5% is what they use for capital outlay. And they have a 3 to 5 year plan with their capital outlay. And no matter what, in fact, some counties had a 10% capital outlay. And they had it budgeted out for the next so many years. This is what we're going to do. That is a sustainable budget plan. And I would like for us in Washington County to be prudent and walk in that plan. If we're going to pass this millage, then use it wisely and plan for the things that we need, so that way the surprises of bulletproof vests for our law enforcement isn't a surprise. But that is my just recommendation. If we're going to do this, then let's just be wise with it and spend it and appropriate it wisely. Thank you.
Ms. Masson, Sue Masson, Eva Masson.
We cannot propose a millage increase 2 days after Election Day. We just cannot. You guys, come on. If we were going to raise taxes, we should have been very upfront with the voters that that was our position. To propose a millage increase 2 days after the election, come on. We talk about transparency in government and being forthright with the citizens, and we all may have voted for a millage increase, but we should have done it last week. We shouldn't do it this week. I do not think that is fair, and it would be embarrassing, and we will be shamed, because we should be shamed if that's what we do. So if there was a time for a discussion about a millage increase, it should have been last week, not today.
Well, I can just tell you that personally, I was interviewed by the newspaper, and I put right in the paper, they said, would you be willing to do that? And I said, yes, if it's necessary, I would be willing to do that. That was in the paper 3 weeks ago. So I don't quite see how this is the surprise that some people are leading us to believe. Rich Pond.
I believe you might have read in the paper my statement about the millage increase if necessary. And I won't go into that. I won't quote my quote from my quote. But I think the people voted for us. We were elected because they trusted our judgment. And I think most of them know we wouldn't even be considering this if we weren't strapped. And we just simply cannot. I'm not going to tell my constituents that I'm going to vote to increase anything as far as county services that we need if we don't have some kind of revenue to pay for it, some kind of revenue stream to pay for it. I'm a little beside myself that we can even consider doing a rerun from last year. A $1.3 million increase in one budget and showed nothing to cover it. All that's doing is just leading us a little farther down the road, dwindling the reserve a little more, not having anything there for backup for disasters as far as ice storms, floods, and that sort of thing. And occasionally we have them. I've read about it in the paper. Thank you.
Okay, so we have before us, just a moment, Harvey, we have before us an ordinance that's going to be levying the taxes. And so we need to move that thing forward to the full quorum court, but y'all are going to have to tell us what we're going to do on this. Harvey? Mr. Bowman, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I've been on this court for 6 years. And I remember the first year it came on, we had the same discussion. And every year that we failed to increase the millage, there were screams and cries about we're headed for disaster. 6 years later, we're in the same place we were 6 years ago. And you know, the one thing that concerns me about raising the millage is all of a sudden we got extra cash and everybody feels like, man, we can get out here and get all kind of things. We can just go crazy spending money. And I think it's really important that we focus on the fact that we need to continue to improve efficiencies. Some of those have been achieved, and there's still others to be done. So, you know, I realize that the millage increase to a typical homeowner is going to be insignificant. I think we just have to focus on being responsible as leaders in our community to try to do the best we can with what we've got to work with. And, you know, I desperately want to see roads improved. I want to see facilities right. I want to see employees treated right. And I just think we've got to go ahead and continue to focus on those things. But, you know, I hate to think that I might go ahead and vote for a millage increase because I've resisted it all this time. And, you know, one thing about it, I can tell you I didn't have to run for re-election this time, so I didn't make any promises one way or another. But the primary principle with me was don't increase my taxes unless there's absolute necessity. And we may be at that point. But I feel like there's a number of the people in the head departments have done a really great job in reducing their budget some. And I think we need to continue to look at trying to do that every way we can. As far as the road department, the money there, I am absolutely convinced. If you get out here on these county roads, and most of us don't, but you get out on these county roads and you'll realize right away how desperate the need is out there. And we've got a crew that's getting the job done, and Mr. Gale is offering some phenomenal technical support for that area, and we need to continue that support. So I'm undecided what I'll do to vote about the millage increase, but seems like we've been down this road a lot of times. And no disaster has occurred yet, so, you know, let's just be prudent in what we try to decide to do. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, so we have an ordinance before us that we have to pass for the school taxes. And of course, the Washington County taxes are on there. So it's right here, 18.1.
We had a motion on the floor at this time. Wait a second.
Yes, ma'am.
I think by law, it doesn't have to be passed now till December.
I mean, there's no question, I mean, what I would like to do is, we've discussed it tonight, I mean, there's no way, but I would like to move it on to the full quorum court, because I have a feeling that there'll be people here to help explain one way or another, but probably, I mean, rightfully so, and they should be able to come and to say their piece. And so, but I would appreciate, I think it would help all of us if we knew exactly what we're gonna do. And so is there a motion? Is somebody gonna be brave?
I'm sorry.
Yes, that would be the motion. Did you make a motion already? Yeah,
Didn't you make a motion?
didn't have a second.
I didn't make a motion.
Okay,
I just said.
okay, so, but we need a motion, that's the thing,
A motion to increase the millage
if that's the,
to what?
she made the recommendation, she did not make a motion.
It was Tom Lundstrom's motion.
You're absolutely right. That's why they left early.
I move that we make the motion to increase the millage and pass it to the full quorum court.
Okay, how much?
To 5.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, so we'll vote on, we probably ought to raise our hands. So all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. It passed. 5 and 4 do not match.
No, it's the majority of those voting.
Just going to quorum court,
Okay, so I'll vote for the yays, we're gonna pass it. And raise it to 5. And I'll go to the full quorum court
Next week.
next week. Okay, now we'll go back and we'll pick up the budget controls, number 17.
Do we need a motion on the school tax?
The, that was the entire ordinance, I believe.
Well, I think that was technically an amendment to it, but may I?
Yes.
If J.P. Devens will clarify that her motion was to increase the Washington County general millage to 5.0 along with everything else in the proposed ordinance, then I think that will be.
So as stated by, I accept that friendly amendment by JP Eva Madison.
It wasn't my amendment. It was, I think it's a clarification.
Right, Scott. So, Ms. Patty, do you have that?
To raise the general meal to 5.0, and then everything else is less.
The same, yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so we want to go back to 17.1, the budget controls. There are just a couple of things. One thing that it has in here is it's got a 3% increase in the salary for the employees, and I feel very strongly about this, and the reason is because Mr. Johansson has told us year after year that we're 4 to 5%, and year after year we give them 2 or 3%, and we're getting further behind. And this is not the time to kick the can down the road. I think that we need to absolutely address this, and that's one of the reasons I asked for people to cut their budgets if they could, because I want to make sure we had enough money to do this. And we do. I mean, we don't have any skin left on our teeth, but we do have enough to do this. And so, and of course, there are only two things that we changed. We changed that, and then we changed the dates. We changed the verbiage on, it's 17, it's page, I don't know what page it is in here. I'm sorry, number 6 is the other one. And for some reason, my copy did not get changed, because there are two changes. One is 3%. It should say 3%, and then, and I apologize because I didn't get that back. I guess that whenever Mr. Lester had to go home, he didn't get time to pencil that in. But the second thing is that we'll want to change on here is that where it says first 2-year term, second 2-year term, we just changed that to first 2-year term. The second one would be 4 years, and then the next one would be 6 years, 8 years. And so that it's not tied to the terms, because the terms of the year terms have changed. But I would think that the intent of this was every 2 years to give them a little bump, and so those are the changes that I recommend or suggest, and so it's open for discussion. Well, we need the budget controls we have to pass that.
I'd like to make a motion to pass to approve the budget controls with the stated amendments on item number 6, changing it from 3.5 to 3.0, and editing the 2-year terms to 4-year terms. I believe that was it,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
That's my motion.
Do we have a second? Okay, discussion? Mr. Maxwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've seen a couple of times, it's been very, very limited use, but I think it's been very helpful. The line item transfer part, I think it's brought some things to light. I think a lot of them we've approved. Matter of fact, I'm trying to think if there's anything we didn't approve. So I don't think it's obstructed anybody's budgets, but I think it has made it easier for us to actually, for the budget to mean what the budget said, instead of being kind of arbitrary. So and we're the only county that I know of, when I did the research, that actually, one of the reasons I brought this up last year was I think we're the only county that does line item transfers. I think most counties do drop dead budgets. So if you got any money in that line item, it has to stay there until the end of the year, and it gets swept back into county general, unless you budget it that way from the start. So I don't think our numbers are too harsh here, and I think it's been, like I said, been very rarely used, but I think it might be good for us to maybe bring the cap down to 15,000 and make it where it doesn't exceed 10% of the operating budget for the future.
Can I have a point of clarification exactly where on number 2? I know, but I've got new prescription glasses, and I just... Transfers going out, in or out of capital outlay? Is that where you are?
Not capital outlay.
Where are you on, are you
Number
on
two.
number 2, if I may ask, Mr.?
Yep. Transfers will cap at 20,000 or 4% of a department's operating budget per single transfer. And annual total line item transfers may not exceed 12% of operating budget. Any transfers exceeding this limit will require approval of the quorum court. So I'm offering the amendment of changing that to, instead of 20,000, dropping that to 15,000, and the appropriate percentage to that, I think that'd probably be 3%, and may not exceed 10% of the operating budget.
Okay.
Okay, Comptroller Shannon, would you mind coming up here and I've got a couple of questions. I think probably several other people do too.
Is there a motion to amend?
Yes. Yes. My question to you is, how many times do you think this will come into play? Are there departments that routinely move large amounts of
Well, the vast majority of them have been within the limits, but there's quite a bit of shifting around, and my glasses broke, so gotta bear with me.
Oh,
Got a monocle.
Yeah, so.
So do you see any issues with making these changes?
Say again?
Do you see any issues with making these changes?
Well, it'd just be, by lowering the limits, it'd just be a little, a few more that might come before the court for approval. But, whatever y'all want, I'll implement and monitor.
Well, I would just clarify, the intent doing it now before next year is so that the budgets kind of fall in line, so we don't have a lot of exceptions. And I think that happened last year, where I'm remembering 3, I could be incorrect, my wife remembers better than I do all the time, but I think I remember 3 or 4. I know the sheriff had some maintenance on an airplane we had to do, very understandable, went right through. Tonight we heard one from Judge Zimmerman's juvenile court, went through. I believe there was, maybe Judge Zimmerman had another one, or there was a couple others in there, but, what's that? The library, okay. So it's been very few. People have adjusted their budgets. I think the benefit of that is we've actually, what was budgeted and approved last year, except for those 3 or 4 reasonable exceptions, we've stuck with. So the intent would be everybody would have plenty of time to make sure their budgets don't have some line item that they need to move a large amount of money. So hopefully we wouldn't see a big exceptional change in line item transfers in the future, no more than we saw them this year.
So that makes sense, Ms. Masson, even Ms.
Yeah, I'm not sure we got the language right on the change to 4-year terms. I don't think we should just replace 2 with 4.
Oh, no,
That's what the motion was,
okay.
so.
And I probably didn't make it very clear, but the first one would say that, it'd just say the first 2 years. The second one would be, probably what we ought to do is just do it 2 years, 4
Well,
years.
I think we need to see this in writing before we pass it. I mean, I think having written ordinances to review is the wise thing. So we can, granted, we're approving budget controls tonight to be part of the later budget ordinance, so we don't actually have to pass this on. But I think it's good to see things in writing,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
there's confusion, I think, among everybody, so.
We'll try to get that to you in the next few days. I had it drafted, and I don't know why it's not in here. And I apologize for that. Thank you very much, Shannon. Mr. Gales.
We have, go to item 4. There's a problem with the audit on that I need to address too.
Okay.
Number 4.
It's about purchases and P cards.
Yes. Go to number 4. Yes.
Yeah, page 40, or maybe it's not 40.
Where it says in there with a purchase order or P card, we have been deemed on that because that allows people to go purchase with a P card without going through the proper purchasing procedures. So the P card is not auditable. And we have difficulty with that, and we were dinged on that this year about purchases with a P card. You can go buy with the P card, but you need a purchase order. You need a paper trail. So with this, they've interpreted you can either use a purchase order or a P card. So there's no paper trail because the P cards are paid automatically to the bank and not audited. So we need to say that it's got to be with a purchase order. Delete P card.
Gotcha. Just, yes.
We have about 4 different items on the table here, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure which one we're going to vote on or how we're going to do this first, but we got the changing the 3.5 to a 3.0. We now have the P card removal. We have the line item transfer percentages, and then we have number 6, changing the verbiage on first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I think we might be better served to do these one at a time and not get too confused.
That's
So-
perfectly fine. That makes sense. So we'll go through we'll just take them in the order that they come. So the first one is the line item transfers. Okay, all right, so is there further discussion on this one, on this particular one, on the line item transfers? All right, Ms. Harbison?
I think we need to leave the cap at 20,000 and not lower it to 15,000. 20,000, anything above that would, anything under that, that means that they have to come to the court and ask permission to transfer that money. And I think 20,000 worked this year, and so I think if we're going to put a limit of what can be transferred, I think we need to keep it at 20,000. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Okay, so we've had a motion, it's been seconded.
Yeah, I just like what Justice Maxwell said, so thank you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. That's what we're voting on. We're voting on changing it to the 15,000. Ms. Harbison made a comment. But, so, there's 2 changes, 15,000 and 3%. And 10%, yeah. Yep. Okay, I was, no, we need to vote on this. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 opposed. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. The next one would be, we'll just do number 4. We'll take them in order.
I'll make a motion that they eliminate 4 P card.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the next one is changing the salaries from 3.5 to 3%. 3.0. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then the last one is the elected officials, and on that one, I think we will get this organized so that it comes out correct. And what I mean by that is, the first one will say the first 2 years, the second one will say the first 4-year term, the next one will say 6 years, and the next one will say 2 4-year terms, and then the last one will say 10 years or more. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Kyle, will you come up if you have this figured out? We just want to get it right.
Okay. With the 2-year terms on there changing to 4-year terms, I think the easiest terminology to change would be go year by year. So the ordinance really should read the first year at 80% of the range of that year. And then the second year should be 82.5% of the range of that year. And that range comes from the AAC. Third year should read 85% of the range for that year. Fourth year should be 87.5% of the range for that year. Fifth year should be 90% of the range for that year. Sixth year should be 92.5% of the range for that year. Seventh year, 95% of the range for that year. Eighth year, 97.5% of the range for that year. Ninth year, 100% of the range for that year. After you've reached 100%, each year after that, it should be a 2.5% increase of the range of that year.
Would you mind saying that one more time? I just want to make sure I've got down. Did you get that down, Miss Patty? Okay, well, let's do that.
I can say it again if you want to.
Okay, yes, please do. Sorry.
So the ordinance should read, as an elected official, your first year in office, you'll receive 80% of the range for that year. Your second year in office should be 82.5% of the range for that year. Third year should be 85% of the range for that year. The fourth year should be 87.5% of the range for that year. The fifth year should be 90% of the range for that year. The sixth year should be 92.5% of the range for that year. The seventh year should be 95% of the range for that year. The eighth year should be 97.5% of the range for that year. The ninth year should be 100% of the range for that year.
Got it, perfect.
After that, each additional year in office should be a 2.5% increase of the 100% of the range for that year.
Mr. Maxwell.
This is not for or against, but I just want to point out something. If we change that to a 2.5 each year, there will be a compounded increase in what that cost, as opposed to changing it every 2 years to 5. I know it's the same, 2.5 times 2 years is still 5%, but we'll incur that extra 2.5 a year earlier, and then the full 5 the next year. So just as long as we think through that math and make sure that's what we want to do, and just realize those are two different numbers. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Is there any other discussion on this?
So what you were saying was, in the ordinance currently now, it starts out at 80%, and it says mid-term of that 2-year term, you're going up 2.5%. So it doesn't change.
Actually, what I'm saying is if we wait 2 years and jump a full 5, that's less revenue than if we wait 1 year, jump 2.5, wait another year, jump another 2.5. Because you will have that second year, will have a full 5%. But in the middle, you have increased your numbers by 2.5. So there is an there's an incremental increase to what it's going to cost the county. I said I'm not for or against this. I'm just pointing out that the math is different when you do 5% every 2 years than it is if you do 2.5 each year moving up. You get to the same percentage, but it costs you more money in the middle year than you would have paid otherwise from the county coffers. So I'm pointing that out just so that we understand those are two different financial equations. even though the percentage is the same. Does that make sense?
Right, but you
But
do know
if
that
you
the
look
range,
at-
the
I'm
range
sorry.
changes each year, correct?
Right.
You're aware of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So really, it didn't change anything.
No, it will, absolutely.
Because the first 2-year term, it's 80%, but midterm, it jumps to 82.5. So that wouldn't change anything, because then you're doing, you see what I'm saying? And the next time, it'll be 85% the first year that you've been there for 2 terms currently. But the second year, it jumped to 87.5.
So let's do some simple math here. So this, if you're gonna say, I'm just gonna do 100,000 because the math's easy and I only have a math minor. So if you're making 100,000 in the first year term and you're getting 80% of the range, and your 100% is 80%, or 80% of the range. Under the way it is currently, the second year, the first year, you're at 100,000. The second year, you're at 100,000. It's not until you clear that 2-year hurdle that you jump to 5% more.
No, it says midterm.
Mid-
82.5%.
Okay, so the first 2 years, you're going to make 80% under this. The other way it does, the first year you make 80, the second year you make 82.5. And so your salary went up 2.5%, so if you're making 100,000, it's 102.5. The next year you would go to 105,000. That extra $2,500 in the middle year, I'm saying not pro con, I'm just saying the math is different. It's compounded interest instead of annual interest, if you will. So we just need to appreciate that while we're making our decisions, that those are not the exact same increments of money. Even though you get to 85% in 2 years, when you do that increase in the middle of the term, you're increasing the amount of money that we would spend to do that. So
But it clearly says, it says first 2-year term, 80%. Midterm, so the next year you get 82.5%. And you would go down just exactly like what he did. So, I mean, the math comes out exactly the same as far as I can see. We will get in writing and get it to everybody, and if y'all could, make your comments on that. And then we will, obviously, this has to go before the full quorum court, and we will get it ironed out for certain at that time. Are there any other comments? All right, so let's see, have we had a motion on this particular one yet? Ms. Madison?
Are you going to ask us to vote on recommending this go to the full quorum court while we don't have the language in front of us?
I can withdraw my motion if you need it until we get get this at quorum or Tuesday's meeting.
Tuesday's meeting, we'll get it.
So,
Everybody will have a copy before
right.
then.
So I'd like to withdraw my motion
That's perfectly
until we
fine.
have this reviewed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other comments? All right, any public comments? Okay, we knew it was going to be long tonight. Thank you for your patience. There's one more motion. Oh, Ms. Masson, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
There were 2 issues that were lingering from the last time that were on my mind because I asked about them. It was the, what happened with the revenue from the sale of the excess equipment at the road department, because I didn't remember seeing where that came from. And then I thought we were going to have the county attorney here tonight to answer questions about his budget, because I don't know what the status of that was, but I think that there's some confusion out there about when budgets are coming for consideration. And if we're in fact going to finalize the entire budget next Tuesday, then I think everybody should be here to answer questions, because I think we should be able to ask whatever questions we need to ask to finalize. So if, in fact, the meeting is Tuesday to finalize it, then I think everybody needs to be here. Because I don't think it's fair for us to ask questions and then say, well, we'll just, save that for the next meeting, because there won't be one. So for our agenda planners, and now I will make a motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor?
JP Ussery?
Yes.
In the finance, or in personnel, there was this ordinance
that for the sheriff's title changes. I didn't know if you were wanting to put it.
Okay, yes, ma'am. If we could go ahead, and,
I'll withdraw my motion to adjourn. I'll withdraw my second. Okay, because we can't, a motion to adjourn is not debatable, so
okay.
for being procedurally proper. I withdraw it. Now we can do it.
Okay, so.
I just didn't know if that was something you needed done.
Yeah, thank you for taking care of us. Butch?
I did have one comment. Maybe something went over my head, or we're talking about finalizing the budget on Tuesday.
We're going to try to.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that we will, but that's the goal.
Okay, well, we won't have determined what our stream of revenue is gonna be by then. So, I might be abstaining from the vote on account of I don't like to vote to pay for something when I don't have money to pay for it with.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Ms. Patty, can you just read is there a title only on that thing, or? Okay.
I made everybody a copy, and it's on your computer too.
Okay. Yes, if you don't mind.
But if you need me to read it,
No,
I've got it.
we're fine. Okay, we have a motion. Second. All in favor? All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Hey, Bill, before everybody leaves, we got a chili luncheon tomorrow at the sheriff's office. Top of the Cop fundraiser, best cooks in America, best chili ever, 11 o'clock. Is that right? 11 o'clock tomorrow.
You gotta quit smoking, Bill. Or at least switch to
I
the
just
filter.
hope I didn't screw it up.
I wouldn't be off.